Hey, all. I know I'm on early, but I have a lot to bring up.
Mark Kelly is exhausting. He is not a senator. I'm not going to call him a senator. He is not acting like someone who should be in that position of authority over a district or over a state. Why are you going to the Jezebel whore, Sodom and Gomorrah media, screeching about depletions of ammunitions and weapons and naming them off on TV? What are you doing? Who are you supporting? Who do you work for? Like, you are working directly against President Trump and what he's trying to do. Are you trying to thwart the negotiations by giving the IRGC some sort of falsely perceived advantage so that they don't have to properly negotiate to get out of this shit? President Trump is ridding the world of the mullahs and the ayatollahs controlling the Strait of Hormuz with their fear tax, as Dr. Peter Navarro put it, or the Lords of London, and paying the bank, the United Kingdom. God, we've been doing it since they've been anyway. They're still mad at us about gaining independence in 1776. So, they're trying to get money from us. Coming and going still to this day, and we're in 2026. Yeah, so the only reason that we're getting away from all that is because President Trump is handling business like a real man should. You wouldn't know anything about that, though, would you, Mark Kelly? You're acting like you retired as some sort of 4-star general. Dude, you wouldn't have even been read in on these briefings. You were in intelligence briefings. You're not supposed to be going to the public talking about. They're classified for a reason, you asshole. So, you know what? Secretary of War, this is to Pete Hegseth. Remove him from his cat card. Terminate his cat card. So when you try to get on base from now on, you don't get that. You don't get the cat card. And you might need to have a rank snatched from your monkey ass too. You don't need the privilege of going to the commissary and to the BX or the PX and saving money and having your golf afternoons on the beautiful greens. The bases have really beautiful golf courses, just so everybody's keenly aware. You don't get that privilege for the rest of your pathetic existence, you creep. You clearly seditious. You are not working in the interests of the United States or anybody else. President Trump tells these countries, you're protected. Go through the Strait of Hormuz. Don't worry about it. We got our Navy there protecting you. Go on through if you must go to get your oil from there. If not, hey, we are energy independent, baby doll. You can come to the United States and get that sweet crude, bro. You ain't got to get that crude and go all the way to the freaking Middle East. Come on over to Louisiana. Come to Texas. We'll get you hooked up. We got it right here, baby. And it's beautiful, sweet crude coming out of them derricks, honey, coming out of the Gulf of America. We got you. Why are you going over there anyway? Stop listening to Mark Kelly. He's a retard. He's just like this idiot here in Colorado, Jason Crow, always pretending to be high-speed military. Y'all wouldn't even been read in on most of the stuff. The only reason you know things is because you're on committees. If we had a leader, John Thune, Mark Kelly would have already been stripped of all these committees. He needs to be kicked off these committees because clearly he's a gossip queen and he doesn't know how to keep his mouth shut. You worse than one of them church ladies on Sunday morning. You just talking about things that have the public doesn't need to know. You're obviously trying to work against the United States because you don't like the president. How come you ain't say shit about Afghanistan and all of the weapons and depleted weaponry going left for the Taliban for them to enjoy? Hundreds of billions of dollars just left to the Taliban. Here you go. Here's all our brand new missiles and everything. Here you go. How come you celebrated it? You celebrated that. How come you celebrated Ukraine? and Tony Blinken and Jake Sullivan coming out making Pentagon announcements. Oh, we more money to Ukraine, more weapons to Ukraine. That clearly depleted our supply, but you ain't say shit about that in a disparaging way. You celebrated it. All the Ukraine funding, all the Ukraine weapons and things of that sort. You celebrated it. When Joe Biden drained our oil reserves to try to steal an election, which he actually did, you said nothing. You celebrated it. They depleted our domestic oil supply that's only supposed to be used in the case of emergency. And oh, by the way, it was President Trump during Trump 1.0, his administration, that filled up those tanks. And Biden drained them so he could steal an election. Man, fuck you people. Mark Kelly, you need to be stripped of every military privilege that you have. You're going to run around and have a case of a foot and mouth and ass disease because you can't keep that big trap shut, then you don't need to have access to the information. Secretary of War, strip him of all of his base privileges, take his cat card, and take that damn rank. Sick of Mark Kelly.
Colin, since you're here, I'm going to play you a little bit of this. I'll play the whole thing later, but I'm going to show you a little bit of it. This was great. She took him out and her whole party. I'll explain more later, but I'll play you a little bit of this so you can get a taste of it.
This King's speech is taking place against the most extraordinary backdrop. We knew the carriages were booked, the horses were ready, the King was coming, but would we have a Prime Minister? So, Mr. Speaker, it is such an honor to be the leader of the opposition who gets to respond today. May I start by congratulating the proposer and seconder of the loyal address on their excellent speeches. And can I also congratulate the whips for finding two backbenchers prepared to support the Prime Minister at this time. The honourable member for Bradford West gave a moving and funny speech. I especially appreciated her comments about black and brown faces on TV, or as my children say, oh look, it's mummy again. She only touched lightly on the fact that she is someone who has faced one of the most challenging childhoods imaginable, and yet through the strength of her character has made it to this place. Yeah. She's made of tough stuff, and that is something we need more of in this house. Anyone who can boast of chewing up and spitting out George Galloway in an election is clearly formidable. I also congratulate the member for Harlow on successfully delivering a humorous and warm-hearted speech. As he noted, he is my constituency neighbour, and he also, yes, did run the London Marathon last month, raising money for St Clair Hospice, which cares for both our constituents. And so I would like to take this opportunity to thank him for doing that. So I've become a big fan of his after listening to his speech, especially after he was so generous in his comments about the Harlow Conservatives' successful election campaign and my councillor's outstanding work regenerating the town centre. And I would say to him, if things on that side of the house are getting a bit much, he would be very welcome to cross the floor and help Conservatives carry on that work. Mr. Speaker, I think we can say that the proposer and seconder of the loyal address have upheld the best traditions of the House. I would, of course, like to pay tribute to His Majesty the King. His Majesty has served through a period of...
Well, there's a taste of it, but she goes in and roasts him pretty bad. It turns out that Starmer is threatened to call for or banning everybody, Colin. It's going to dissolve Congress or the Parliament. So they all have to go up for election. So he's going to take all the Labour Party down with him if they don't back him. Now, there's over 100 that have signed to get him out, and they're going to want to try to have a vote. But he's trying to ban them all or dissolve the whole thing to get them all out. If he goes down, he's going to take them down with him. I'll explain more later anyways. All right, I just wanted to show you that a little bit. I'm going to be playing that a lot later when more people are on. Let me get into the whistleblower about the China virus jab. This was pretty good. Let me I gotta drag this over here. I gotta fast forward a little bit here. It's not doing on its own much.
Conclusions. Only it was not independent. It was a circle. One part of that circle is a body most Americans have never heard of. The biological sciences.
The CIA was part of the whole jab thing. I don't know if this is loud enough. Let me go back just a little. Here we go.
Where it came from, what our government knew, and why they had to fight their own government to find out. Today, the committee will hear from an intelligence community whistleblower about these questions.
Hopefully you can
The
hear it.
witness will testify that the CIA scientific analysts repeatedly concluded that a laboratory leak was the most likely origin of COVID-19, and that those conclusions were buried, softened, or withheld from Congress while the public was told to trust a different story. For years, Americans were told to trust the experts,
no sound?
Trust the agencies, trust the intelligence community.
Hold on. Let me check that. All right. Sound is on. Anyone else out there? I'll rewind it a little bit. Any
and
sound
to this
now?
day, the American people have never received a full accounting of where it came from, what our government knew, and why they had to fight their own government to find out. Today, the committee will hear from an intelligence community whistleblower about these questions. The witness will testify that the CIA scientific analysts repeatedly concluded that a laboratory leak was the most likely origin of COVID-19, and that those conclusions were buried, softened, or withheld from Congress while the public was told to trust a different story. For years, Americans were told to trust the experts, trust the agency.
What the heck? Let me check all my settings. Open by sound settings. Yeah. This is all good. Can you hear me talking? Can you hear me talking? There's a pain. I know the sound's a little bit low, but it's definitely on. Totally quiet, huh? Huh. Stay right there. I'm going to go out and come back in. All right, we'll try that. So you'll get a black screen for a little bit. All right, now can you hear me? Now can you hear me? Now can you hear me? Shit, what's this? Oh, shit. Now can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Oi, it might be on your end because it shows it coming up on my phone. Here, I'll play a little bit and play it on my phone.
Trust the intelligence community and trust the officials who assured us that they were following the science. But the evidence before the committee tells a very different story. Today we will expose a system in which a small circle of officials, scientists, grantees, and intelligence advisors move from agencies to agency, meeting to meeting, briefing to briefing, reviewing one another's work, and shaping one another's conclusions and presenting those conclusions to Congress and the public as if they were independent conclusions. Only it was not independent, it was a circle. One part of that circle is a body most Americans have never heard of, the Biological Sciences Expert Group, known as BSEG, or the B Group.
Colin, it's got to be on your
BSEG
end.
operates under the Office of the Director of National Intelligence.
It's coming through on my
Its
phone
stated
and every
purpose
tab.
is
It's
to give the
playing.
intelligence community access to outside scientific experts on biological threats. Sounds reasonable, but not if those experts are not independent. For example, Dr. Ralph Barrick collaborated with Dr. Zhengli Shi in Wuhan to create gain-of-function coronaviruses. But Dr. Barrick was also part of BSEG and an active consultant to intelligence agencies on the origins of COVID-19 pandemic. Likewise, Peter Daszak received hundreds of millions of dollars from the US government and worked with Dr. Shi also on these gain-of-function experiments. Daszak was even sent to China with the WHO to investigate the origins of COVID. So the very scientists that were commissioned to investigate COVID were, in some cases, the very scientists who were complicit in the origins of the gain-of-function experiments that may well have created
Yeah, I think it was
COVID.
on your end.
In essence, the intelligence community pays researchers to review work and write papers. NIH funds their grants. The CIA then consults them and gives them access to classified information. The national academies publish their work. Policymakers then cite the result as a consensus. But it's a circle. At the center of the government side of this circle was Dr. Anthony Fauci. For years, Dr. Fauci was not merely a public health official speaking from the NIH. He had a long-standing relationship with the national security and intelligence apparatus on biological threats, dangerous pathogens, classified life sciences researches, pandemic preparedness, and COVID origins. Again and again, documents show him being brought into national security discussions far beyond ordinary public health messaging. During COVID, intelligence officials arranged for Dr. Fauci to review highly classified intelligence assessments that could not even be sent outside the White House complex. But how can Anthony Fauci objectively comment on a discussion of COVID origins when he approved the very funding that may have caused the pandemic virus? From the outset of the pandemic, Dr. Fauci shaped the conclusions. Dozens of times, he referred to the idea that the pandemic originating in the lab was a conspiracy, that it was a conspiracy theory. Dr. Fauci convened the now infamous February 1st, 2020 call. Some scientists on that call privately raised serious concerns about a laboratory origin.
Maybe.
Yet ironically, those same scientists later co-authored the proximal origin paper, which publicly dismissed the lab leak hypothesis. One author received a $9 million grant from Dr. Fauci's own agency after he changed his opinion from lab leak on the private phone call to natural origin in public. At the same time, Dr. Fauci coordinated with the national academies on coronavirus origins and public-facing messaging. These were not independent experts reaching a consensus. They were part of the same machine, designed to reach the same conclusion. The question is not whether the government may consult experts. The question is whether those experts were independent, whether conflicts were disclosed, whether dissenting views were preserved, whether the lab leak possibility was fairly evaluated, and whether Congress and the American people received the truth or a curated result. When Congress asked these questions, government officials lied to our face. They classified the documents. They suppressed the information. They changed the definitions. They invoked sources and methods. They told Congress only what they wanted Congress to know. In 2023, John Ratcliffe, the former director of national intelligence, testified before Congress with a stark warning. He said a lab leak was the only explanation credibly supported by intelligence, science, and common sense. He warned that partisan politics and analyst disagreement with Trump administration policy, Trump derangement syndrome, had created illegitimate roadblocks to the truth. I agree. He said the COVID-19 Origin Act, which Congress passed unanimously, should finally make intelligence on COVID's origins public. I couldn't agree more. Despite a unanimously passed law, though, requiring the declassification of all information related to COVID origins, the deep state still resists this congressional mandate. Our witness today will explain what happened inside the CIA. According to his testimony, CIA scientific analysts concluded multiple times between 2021 and 2023 that a lab leak was the most likely origin of COVID-19. Yet those conclusions never shaped the official narrative, never made the intelligence report. Congress was never told. It was not until after the 2024 election that the outgoing Biden administration directed the CIA to issue an assessment, not because of new intelligence, but so
The deep
officials
state
could
lied
walk
to
out
all
the
of
door
us.
claiming there was nothing left to find. That is not analysis. That is a cleanup operation. This hearing is about more than one witness, one assessment, or one agency. It's about a federal apparatus that told the American people to trust the science while hiding the machinery that shaped the science. It's about an intelligence community that relied on outside experts whose conflicts were never disclosed. It's about public health officials with access to intelligence that Congress has struggled to obtain. It's about researchers and advisors cycling through grants, contracts, classified briefings, federal service and advisory committees, and presenting the results as independent, even though they weren't. The cover-up is not just about protecting one research grant, it's about protecting an entire network of labs, grants, intermediaries, and bureaucratic architecture quietly engineered to outlast any moratorium, any congressional inquiry, and any election. After millions died, children lost years of learning. Small businesses were destroyed. Civil liberties were restricted, and dissenting Americans were censored and smeared. The government owes its people the evidence. Our witness is testifying publicly today at great personal risk. He and other brave whistleblowers have come forward because the truth was being buried, because government secrecy cannot become government impunity. I want to acknowledge the Trump administration officials who made good on their commitment to transparency and cooperated with this investigation. Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy, Director of NIH, Jay Bhattacharya, Director of the National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, and former Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem. They set a standard. I expect the rest of the administration to meet it. We owe the American people a complete record. We owe every family harmed by this pandemic a government that does not hide behind secrecy, conflicts, and curated science when the stakes are life and death. In public, starting today. I want to note for the record that Mr. Erdman is appearing today pursuant to a subpoena issued by this committee on May 5th, 2026. This is a public hearing. The witness is a current CIA employee and has previously provided testimony to the committee in a classified setting. If a question calls for classified information, or if the witness believes any answer may implicate classified information, the witness should advise the committee before answering, and the committee will address the matter through the appropriate procedures. The transcript of the witness's prior classified deposition has not been finalized and has not completed classification review. Members and the witness should not quote from, characterize, or seek confirmation of deposition testimony that may contain classified information in this public setting. It is a practice of this committee to swear in the witness. Will you please stand and raise your right hand? Do you swear that the testimony you will give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God. Thank you. You may be seated.
I don't know how far it goes ahead when I press that, though. I was thinking of fast forwarding some of the.
James E. Erdman III is a
parts.
CIA Senior Operations Officer. He's a decorated officer with decades of intelligence and national security experience. Before joining the CIA in 2013, he served with the 2nd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment, and as a Foreign Services Officer at the Department of State. He recently completed a joint duty assignment with the Office of the Director of National Intelligence Director Initiatives Group. Mr. Erdman holds a Bachelor of Science in Biology with a minor in chemistry from Western Oregon University and has received the Director of National Intelligence Award and the CIA Intelligence Medal of Merit. Mr. Erdman, you are recognized for your opening statement.
Good morning, Chairman Paul and other members of the Oversight Committee. Thank you for the complimentary introduction, and I appreciate the committee's dedication to transparency and accountability. I am a career CIA operations officer, and as you mentioned, I was on joint duty assignment at the Office of Director National Intelligence Directors Initiatives Group, or the DIG, between March 2025 and April 2026. I was responsible for leading the DIG's investigation into COVID origins, anomalous health incidents, and unidentified anomalous phenomena. I'm here today to discuss the COVID cover-up, the national security implications associated with the DIG's investigative findings,
It's all planned.
and CIA refusal to
Deep
comply with
state,
lawful oversight, as well as how we remedy these problems. Intelligence community leaders and senior analysts downplayed the possibility that the COVID pandemic originated as a result of a lab incident. Motives are difficult to define given the scope of the DIG's review. Intentional or not, the IC's actions resulted in a cover-up, wasted resources, and a failure to properly inform policymakers. Public health policy would have been very different had the American public been made aware that a virus from a lab in China was going to serve as the foundation for an emergency use authorization mRNA products being mandated by the former administration. Dr. Fauci's role in the cover-up was intentional. Dr. Fauci influenced the analytical process and findings by leveraging his position to ensure the IC consulted with a conflicted list of curated subject matter experts, public health officials, and scientists. This included some of the authors of the paper, The Proximal Origin of SARS-CoV-2, and other public health experts who have been in his orbit for the last 20+ years. Some of the scientists were part of the Biological Sciences Experts Group, or the BSEG, an office of Director National Intelligence Advisory Body, whose members often receive considerable funding from NIAID and public health agencies. The BSEG scientists influenced national laboratory WMD research, policy decisions, finished analysis, and other intelligence matters, creating misaligned incentives and conflicts of interest, as well as counterintelligence issues. Since 2006, the BSEG consulted part-time on biodefense issues for the IC, while conducting government-funded research and holding academia positions, as well as maintaining roles in public health institutions and serving as members in the National Academy of Science. They received funding from NIAID and other agencies for vaccine research, USAID's PREDICT project, the Cooperative Threat Reduction Program, and even worked with Chinese scientists on coronavirus and other pathogen studies pursuing vaccines. There was no oversight monitoring how this web of relationships influenced research, policy, and public health in any holistic way for over 20 years. In fact, several of the BSEG scientists helped Dr. Fauci rewrite definitions of gain of function in 2015 to lift a funding pause on dangerous research. Still others participated in planning Event 201 in 2019. This was a coronavirus pandemic tabletop exercise, curiously similar to the events that played out during the COVID-19 pandemic. And it was attended by Dr. Fauci and individuals with IC ties like former DNI Avril Haines. The CIA and DNI analytic managers responsible for examining the origin of COVID made decisions inconsistent with the conclusions of subject matter experts and analytical tradecraft, consistently favoring the theory of zoonosis or natural origin. Following the CIA's COVID relook that culminated in 2023, The CIA retaliated against analysts supporting the lab leak hypothesis. CIA analysts were not bribed. The analysts that supported the 2023 lab leak conclusion took every administrative measure available to them to address their deep concerns regarding the analytic integrity of their finished intelligence. CIA managers retaliated against them for their refusal to agree with management's middle-of-the-night anonymous rewrite of the analysis, which changed the assessment to a non-call judgment. Dr. Anthony Fauci's influence over the IC's COVID origin analysis and the witting and unwitting role some BSEG scientists and IC personnel played in the cover-up exposed why this issue is of deep concern. Failure to address the United States government's inability to differentiate between public health and biodefense and the oversight-resistant ecosystem of life science actors has been fertile ground for increasingly dangerous continental United States gain-of-function research, as well as similar research conducted in U.S. government-supported labs abroad. Post-9/11 changes in public health and biodefense roles and responsibilities have blurred the lines between scientists, the military, the intelligence community. It has resulted in a deliberately opaque and excessively redundant biodefense research policy and financial infrastructure, seemingly intended to escalate bureaucratic bloat. This is a national security crisis caused by the inability to provide real oversight. The systematic failures associated with muddled boundaries between biodefense and public health and an overly complex infrastructure have been exacerbated by documented efforts to circumvent oversight. CIA did not comply with lawful oversight during the Diggs investigation. The behavior significantly impacted Director Gabbard's implementation of several EOs issued during this administration and tasked to the dig. The CIA refused to provide information necessary to understand why analytical standards at the CIA were violated. The CIA illegally monitored the computer and phone usage of DIG personnel, their investigations, and contact with whistleblowers. These were Americans being spied upon illegally while executing duties directed by the President and under the authority of the Director of National Intelligence. One CIA contractor assisting with the Diggs investigation into the events that transpired between 2022 and 2023 was fired by the CIA one day after meeting with the DIG. When the DIG ceased operations, the CIA also took back 40 boxes of JFK files and MK Ultra files being processed for declassification by DNI Gabbard. The legislative and executive branches will continue to be misinformed if this type of behavior is not addressed. The partial solution to dangerous gain of function has already been laid out in executive order.
Well, he's going to spill the beans. This guy's going to spill the beans on how the CIA and Fauci worked together, how they moved it offshore. They knew it was awful for us. It was killing us, Colin.
14292, improving the safety and security of biological research.
I wanted to save the best part for near the end there so more people can get a good laugh. They really roasted him in the parliament today.
We need a comprehensive review of government-funded life science research and a move back to pre-9/11 definitions of gain of function and WMD research.
It was great.
Particularly in the IC and DHS.
Be ready to have a good laugh.
More broadly, we need effective oversight. We must hold agencies responsible for failure to comply with Executive Order 14292, and
they talk about his sexual preferences too.
Oversight must have teeth. You must be willing to pull the purse strings and, if necessary, convene another church committee. The results of our
Really, they're roasting the Labor Party.
the results of our investigation
The only reason why he's not out yet is because he's threatened them to dissolve the whole parliament, and then all the liberals would lose their jobs because they'd have to have a snap election, and they'd be gone.
would have been impossible without whistleblowers willing to come
He's going to
forward.
take them down with him.
They are indispensable agents for reform. Despite statutory law, agency regulation, and training requirements, whistleblowers are almost never protected. Whistleblower protections always seem to protect the agency. Every time
It
the
can't
CIA
happen soon
investigates
enough for me,
itself, they
Colin. Can't
coincidentally
happen
find
soon
no
enough.
wrongdoing. When they do identify issues, they hold the system responsible. That last statement is a verbatim response from a Europe and Eurasia Mission Center lawyer when the CIA Office of Inspector General did identify shortcomings so serious, oversight bodies were holding meetings about it 3 years after the events transpired. It was in response.
Colin, did you see it today? Even though he's going down, they're shipping more illegals into the country on those boats, and they were flying them in.
To the question, was anyone held accountable? Apparently the system is good enough. The only way we solve this issue is with real accountability for failure to comply with executive and legislative branch oversight and an escape valve where whistleblowers can continue to contribute to mission free from retaliation. All IG elements need to be removed from the agencies and fall under a separate entity controlled by the IC Inspector General. The personnel in IG elements should be 1811 certified with regular DOJ and legislative oversight reporting responsibilities. Thank you. And my written statement provides far more details related to these issues. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Erdman. Is it your testimony that there is still
Now you'll see here. Let me back up just a tad bit. I guess I got to play it.
Can continue to contribute to mission free from retaliation.
There's no Democrats in it.
All IG elements need to be removed from the agencies and fall under a separate entity.
today that I'm hearing
Well,
from your
anyways,
testimony?
You won't see any Democrats that attended this thing. They don't want any investigation into the jab. No Democrats.
Is that from an early period of time, you believe, and the information you're aware of, is that CIA scientists from an early time after the pandemic began, 2020, 2021, were concluding that the lab leak was the most likely hypothesis?
Yes, Senator. I'd like to offer some qualifications on that as well. A lot of the issues occurred at the interagency space, at the National Intelligence Council, the individuals responsible for conducting or writing WMD analysis. So, and many of those individuals are on JDA from the CIA. But yes, very early, as early as 2020, there were agencies within the IC circulating papers that that said, hey, there's, for example, DOE circulated a paper in May of 2020 that said that all the conditions were present for a lab leak. And I could go through the timeline, but yes, my short answer is yes, periodically throughout 2020 all the way to 2024. Yes.
I think the arguments, pro and con for what is the evidence on whether this came from a lab or
Not one Democrat there.
came from nature
Not
are still
one.
important. So for
Zero.
years, we've been asking the CIA to produce the scientists, either in a classified setting or a public setting, to discuss the arguments. I don't see any reason why the arguments should be classified. You know, one of the arguments that's made publicly is that the source looks like it came from a single source of RNA, not like 5 different types of viruses or 20 different types like you had with SARS 2003, but it came from
I
one
haven't watched
source.
this
And
whole thing.
virtually everybody
I watched
argues
part of
that
it
sort
enough
of
to know.
indicates
I
a
was going
lab
to
and
go ahead
not a
and play it for
nature.
everybody.
And so those arguments are important scientific arguments to have, but we've been prevented from having them. We've been preventing from getting all of the declassified information. But what I think is of
Why should it be
importance that's new
classified?
today is that your testimony is that the CIA scientists were concluding that it was lab, but then with this, there was a 90-day study in 2021, and this study was done by NIC, led by NIC. Tell us what NIC is again.
It's the National Intelligence Council, and individuals responsible for writing various WMD and
It's not a
file-related
secret.
issues led that.
So when
I
they
mean, why would
had
it be
this
a
study,
secret?
they had CIA scientists telling them, look, the evidence, the scientific evidence looks like it came from the lab. But then they brought in Anthony Fauci. And is it your opinion that Anthony Fauci was able to overrule the scientist or get NIC to conclude somehow
Fauci needs
that
to
there
hang.
wasn't a conclusion to be had here? We're going to be neutral, contradicting what the scientists were telling them?
So there's 2 questions there, and I want to break them up into 2. One is, where were the injection points, Dr. Anthony Fauci? Where did Dr. Anthony Fauci and when did he inject himself into the IC? And the other half of that question, if I'm, and I don't want to extrapolate too much here, is, okay, what happened with why was there a change in analysis? So I'll start with if it's okay, Dr. Paul.
Sure.
Senator, I'll start with Dr. Anthony Fauci. There were 2 instances. On 3 February 2020 and 4 June 2021, Anthony Fauci had contact with the interagency. And how to sort of broadly generalize this is that contact was happily pursued within the IC. They wanted that contact. And he provided a curated list of subject matter experts, which coincidentally wrote The Proximal Origin of SARS-CoV-2. So it's not like he came in and said, you have to do X, Y, and Z. He provided recommendations. It's when you look at what has already been publicly released about Dr. Fauci, and then what you're seeing under the curtain at the IC, where you realize, okay, there is a narrative that was being generated by his contact, not just with experts here in the United States, but experts in Australia and the UK. And that's the public-facing piece. And, you know, he had tried to sort of keep his hands clear of, I didn't have anything to do with the proximal origin of SARS-CoV-2. But in the meantime, he's pushing those authors and individuals that have been in his orbit into the IC as experts. And I'll jump to June 2021. We as the IC at the NIC happily pursued those recommendations. And in one email, which I'll describe to you, the person in charge of leading the 90-day study, he introduced himself to the community that on what they were supposed to be doing, and then the community said, listen, we've got these people we should be talking to, and another very senior NIC officer sent a direct email to him saying, hey, considering that Dr. Fauci is a public health expert, are you sure we should be relying on this? Shouldn't we have a separate set? And in this instance, the individual responded, no, in this case, Dr. Anthony Fauci is a subject matter expert. However, that's directly contradicting his public testimony of being a subject matter expert.
Part of the job in intelligence when you interview someone is assessing their truthfulness, their potential biases or conflicts of interest. Did anyone ever bring up that Anthony Fauci approved the research that went on in Wuhan and that it might not be in his interest for the conclusion to be that it came from a lab that he had funded, that there might be a conflict? Did anybody ever bring up that he might not be an objective witness?
That was one example of an email. No one laid it out quite that clearly. You're piecing it together. We were piecing it together from multiple emails, from multiple agencies, multiple documents. It was more subtle than that. Nobody said this is happening, and unfortunately, I think they probably should have. It was all out there.
But your conclusion is that changing from the scientific consensus of it being from a lab to a neutral position by the CIA was significantly influenced by Anthony Fauci?
It was significantly influenced by Anthony Fauci's injecting himself into the IC. And to go to the second part of your question about what happened, particularly during the 90-day study, we have documentation that shows that as of August 12th, the CIA was considering calling this a lab leak, August 12th of 2021. And then that changed on August 17th of 2021. Right. And unfortunately, because the CIA would not provide us documentation that we asked for, we have no idea why that changed. And that's
And they weren't alone, because we know the FBI was coming to the same conclusion that it was lab leak, as well as the FBI. Senator Ernst?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Really appreciate you being here today. I know that this has been a topic for many of us for many years, and we continue to get pushback from the federal government as we're trying to uncover the truth to this matter. For years, folks who discussed a possible COVID lab origin were dismissed as conspiracy theorists. They were censored. Some were even fired from their jobs. If there was or is a conspiracy, then U.S. government officials and U.S.-funded scientists keeping secrets should be publicly questioned under oath about what they knew and when they knew it. But U.S.-funded scientists somehow are still protected from being questioned publicly, even though they received millions of taxpayer dollars from NIH, DHS, DOE, and DOD. And look, folks, I've long warned about a potential government cover-up of the truth, which our brave witness, again, thank you, Mr. Erdman, has confirmed to us today. I've called for answers from Dr. Ralph Barrick, an expert virologist who showed the intelligence community in January 2020, before the American people knew about the pandemic, that, quote, "We may be on the verge of a global pandemic," end quote. Yet nothing was done to share this information with the American people. I exposed that the Wuhan lab received $1.4 million in federal funds, fought to cut off every single cent flowing to that lab, and I won on this for the taxpayers. And I haven't backed down from fighting for more information on the true COVID origins. And yet Congress is still here, 6 years later, begging agencies to share answers and for committees to make relevant documents public. We are tired of Washington cover-ups. And if they aren't our screw-ups here in the U.S., why would the U.S. government cover up for the CCP and other countries? So, Mr. Erdman, Americans would have been angry to learn in early 2020 that their government may have played a role in COVID-19's creation. Would you say such thinking influenced the intelligence community to suppress a lab leak origin theory?
I would say that there's evidence in the emails that it was part of the calculus. I wouldn't say, so it's very difficult, it's more subtle. Okay. There's sort of a zeitgeist that runs underneath the analysis, and I'll provide a conversation I had with one of our whistleblowers, and I asked, and this individual is an incredibly talented scientist, and I asked that individual, why don't you actually go forward, go public? There's a lot of reasons not to do that. There's a whole bunch. His comment was, nobody wanted the lab leak conclusion, and I'm concerned that there's too many people willing to make excuses for China in this organization for the wrong reasons. That was pervasive. And so the individuals we talked to, they never said, one for one, it's because they disliked the sitting president, or they were trying to cover up, like managers were trying to cover up for China. But it was a pervasive undercurrent, is how they described it. And I think I think to answer your question, there's certainly reluctance to provide information that would be geopolitically destabilizing or provide ammunition for actions that maybe they thought would be unwise.
No,
Did I answer your question, Senator?
Yes, you did. And it's troubling to hear that there's an undercurrent of making excuses for China as well. Deeply troubling. We spend millions of dollars to have an early warning intelligence system. And yet today I'm hearing the system may have been alerted, but no one was acting on the information. Do you think that's an accurate statement?
I can't speak to the health agencies. I can say that the IC was certainly aware early on that it looked like there might be an issue. And so the intelligence that had come in, I don't think they sat on it. I don't think they sat on the intelligence. Now, that speaks to maybe a broader issue with the interaction between IC elements and non-IC elements. Maybe there's some improvements that could be made there, but I didn't see the IC sitting on information extraordinarily long.
Okay, it could have been agencies then extraneous to the IC.
Right, and you know, the bureaucracy is real. I mean, it's just every day sometimes feels like a fight just to get simple things done, and that's just part of working in a large organization. So I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying from the intelligence perspective, I think they identified fairly quickly that this might be an issue.
Mm-hmm. And with this as an issue, typically we go back, we do after action reviews. Do you think this is something that the U.S. government has learned from? I see you grimace. Maybe share a little bit about that, because if this is system-wide across the federal government, you know, how do we stop this from happening again? What lessons have we learned from this, if any? You're still coming forward as a whistleblower. So what have we taken away from this, and how do we prevent this from happening in the future, whether it's, you know, the spread of a pandemic or, you know, what happened within the agency?
So I really don't want to go beyond IC too much, because I'm not part of like the health establishment. I'm not in that organization. But part of the reason the DIG was pulled together as a task force, it was a temporary tool to perform something like an after action review and get at the bottom of what happened. And if you're asking me, did we learn anything? Well, the problem is we did not receive support from the CIA in terms of, and I've documented in my transcribed interview, and I don't want to go into the specifics of that, but there were very specific lists of information we needed so that we could put into context what happened. And so, no, I don't think we've learned our lesson when it comes to transparency and reform. We didn't get the documents we needed. Senator, your committee issued, 14 subpoenas in January of 2025 requesting documents. And Director Gabbard did her absolute best to try and force the IC to start producing these documents. And a bunch of them got sent over to ODNI, but we still didn't get all of them. And so what I'll say is, like, we did not get the documents we needed from the CIA, state INR. And so the lessons in terms of transparency and reform, I don't think those occurred. And they can only occur if we actually do a full review of what happened during COVID. And again, there's a fair question. How long do you want to be backwards leaning looking at COVID? That's a fair question. You only have limited resources, limited time, limited personnel, and we have limited experts that work within the CIA.
They're hiding the documents, that's why.
Threats.
They're hiding it.
The reason COVID is so important is because what we did find is that
they're protecting people like Fauci.
There is a much larger meta problem sitting on top of COVID. The fact that we have these scientists, and again, I'm not vilifying any of these scientists we contracted in to come to the IC. We desperately need their expertise. And so when we invite them in, we're inviting them in because we want their help. And so we need them. But those same scientists, it's this ecosystem that has a lot of money involved. You've got, they're involved with the National Academy of Science, for example, some of them. And, you know, National Academy of Science
Oh, my camera.
also helps
God dang it.
with our WMD policy for the U.S. government. Unfortunately, the National Academy of Science also has a great number of Chinese researchers that co-publish. And so if we're not careful, we're going to have
We'll try to
Chinese
pause this,
researchers
and I'll
helping
go
us
out and come
draft
back in.
U.S.
My camera went out.
WMD policy. That's not.
It came back on. Let me bring this back up. Clear screen, blah, blah. I don't know why it keeps doing that, but it does.
Not a good thing.
Not
You've
a
got the
good thing.
counter threat
I'm
reduction
back.
program that involves some of these IC scientists. And once you start cross-pollinating like that, being able to tease out and really provide proper oversight becomes
It might be
so,
time for a
so
new camera.
difficult. And you're talking about also
I hate to say it,
multiple
'cause I kinda
funding
like this
streams
one.
from multiple different places. It's a very complex problem. COVID, we need the AAR so that we, and it already pointed to the bigger problem. So maybe that's enough, but
Great.
we need that.
Thank you, Mr. Erdman. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Ernst, one thing I would interject as far as lessons from my perspective is the scientists overseeing gain of function research can't be the scientists receiving the money. So we voted last year on the Risky Research Review Act. It'd be a presidential commission, but the scientists that oversee gain of function would not be receiving NIH grants. Part of it is that Fauci had a fiefdom, this enormous fiefdom, and he was controlling the funds, but then there was a danger of that he doles it out to people who agree with him, and I think that was happening. Senator Moreno.
Point well taken.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Erdman, first of all, thank you for your service to our nation in the past, current, and future. Quick question for you, because I've obviously never been in the CIA. Is it easy to be a whistleblower? Is it easy to kind of think about, hey, I'm going to go outside the normal chain of command, or does it come with personal risk, career risk, et cetera?
I do not believe whistleblower protections are sufficient to protect whistleblowers.
So it's not easy. So it's not easy for you to
It
be
is not
here,
easy.
especially you're serving now today. What is your reaction when you look at the dais and you see that there's not a single solitary Democrat member here to listen to your testimony? How does that make you feel?
My goal in being here is.
See, no Democrat will even touch it. They get so much friggin' money from the Pfizer and all them.
Threefold. You know, I want to talk about COVID.
No, I get that, but I'm saying, but you
I wish they were there. I wish they were there.
You're taking personal risk. You're serving the country. You're not partisan. This is not about politics, but somehow it's become about politics because the Democrats don't even want to hear the conversation about what obviously was a grave error that this country made during COVID. And unlike previous situations, there's never been a situation, certainly not in my lifetime, where you had decisions made that affected generations of Americans, kids that were absolutely deprived of their childhood, businesses that were destroyed, families that were torn apart, memories that you'll never get back, trillions of dollars of economic loss. We should at least have a conversation that isn't partisan. And yet, just for the record, there's not a single solitary Democrat senator that's willing to sit in this chamber and listen to your testimony. I think that's an outrage and an insult to people like you. So I'm going to bring a little more levity to what
They're protecting the drug companies.
I just said. Back in June of 21, you talked about that, which is interesting. June of 21. I remember June of 21 as something that came up during a comedy show. I'm not somebody who listens to Stephen Colbert, but he had Jon Stewart on. And he said, and I'm paraphrasing Jon Stewart, I will not deliver it with the same kind of comedic punch, but it said, oh my God, there's been an outbreak of chocolatey goodness near Hershey, Pennsylvania. What do you think happened? Like, oh, I don't know, maybe the steam shovel mated with a cocoa bean. Or it's maybe the expletive deleted chocolate factory. Maybe that's it. And simple joke, talking about, or maybe the simplest solution is maybe the virus leak happened from the virus lab in the city of Wuhan. Or maybe this chain of events of animals mating to each other all over the world resulted in this virus. What ended up happening is that Jon Stewart was immediately tortured. The Washington Post called his joke a dangerous weapon of propaganda. They called him conspiratorial, and he got massive personal backlash. That was in June of 21. So does it turn out that the chocolatey goodness came from the chocolate factory in Hershey, Pennsylvania?
Yeah, just as Director Ratcliffe said in 2020, it sure looks like the chocolatey factory is actually where the chocolate came from.
Yeah, and in fact, it's funny that we're all sitting here today because in that same torture of Jon Stewart, Stephen Colbert said that maybe Jon Stewart was somehow a spy of Senator Johnson because Senator Johnson was the one senator that was saying this from the very beginning. Has continued to hold that accountability, and I applaud Senator Johnson for his absolutely relentless pursuit of the truth in all of this. But let me just spend the last few minutes here talking to you about something.
Yeah, you're right. If the Dems were there, they'd probably be attacking this guy.
That you mentioned, which is near and dear to my heart. And I think all these hearings are important. What you said is super critical. And again, I applaud you for taking and having the courage to come here and your detailed and methodical review of all this. But where's the accountability? This is what I hear from my constituents all over Ohio. It's like, great, you got a hearing, you said this and that happened, but they want to see the perp walks. Where are the people who made these decisions, and how do we hold them accountable? Anthony Fauci is sitting, probably sipping margaritas somewhere with his multi-million-dollar financial success as a result of duping the American people into putting an experimental virus in their vaccine into their bodies, or risk losing their jobs. He's not accountable to anybody. He's having a great life. He was featured on Vogue magazine. He sat there for a cover shot for a day, trying to get beauty shots of him, which I imagine the photographer found difficult. Where do you think that we are on a path to accountability?
So I don't work at DOJ, and so I can't speak to prosecutions or perp walks or any of that stuff. But what I'll say is, and I want to go back to the first thing you mentioned here about the American public. I think, and this is my opinion, I'm not expressing myself as a CIA officer or on loan to DNI, whatever it is. I think we really want both Democrats and Republicans to show up and communicate and cooperate on issues, because part of the most important, and you all know this, and I'm sorry, legislative branch, they have some power of oversight. You guys are not, you can't make DOJ prosecute anybody. You can reach across the aisle, and you can try and get these people to pull the purse strings when agencies are behaving poorly. And, you know, from my perspective, and I don't mean to criticize anyone, we need the legislative branch to start pulling purse strings. It's got to be with teeth if you want accountability. And this is perfect. This forum here is perfect. It's about the transparency piece. Can't act unless people know. On the accountability side, I can tell you that Director Gabbard is doing her best to pursue accountability with all of the investigations that were undertaken by the DIG. And, you know, we can serve everything up, and it's up to DOJ to take action at that point. And I can't speak to DOJ, but yeah.
No, I understand that. And I think what the American people would even expect at a minimum is just an apology for putting the country through this, not giving the proper information. I think that would go a long way. But certainly there was clearly bad actors. Mr. Chairman, you talked about the conflicts of interest. The way you described it is very nice, but ultimately it's corruption. I mean, when somebody's getting paid to give an opinion that's not fact-based, and it leads to personal gain, that's just flat out corruption. And what makes America unique is that we don't allow that kind of corruption in our government. And so I think ultimately where this all has to land is there has to be explicit accountability for individuals who profited off of the misinformation, the shaming of Americans, and the systematic destruction of lots of things in this country. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator.
Tried to do handcuff and it wouldn't do it.
Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and another excellent hearing. I feel your pain and frustration in terms of trying to do oversight investigation and issuing subpoenas that are not responded to, certainly not in full. barely responded to generally. What responses we get are generally non-responsive responses, just a bunch of bureaucratic gobbledygook. So again, I appreciate your efforts though. Mr. Erdman, I appreciate you coming forward. One thing I know as former chairman of the full committee, now as chairman of the
Johnson's been at the front of taking down these people behind
we have
the jab.
laws dating back over 100 years, and the government is the worst offender in terms of retaliating against whistleblowers, even though there's all kinds of these legal protections. So I appreciate you doing this. I'll also note, because nothing shocks me anymore with our colleagues from the other side of the aisle, but I'm shocked that not one of them showed up here. I think one showed up to register his attendance and then gone. I agree with you. It is well past time for us to have a church committee. We're not going to get bipartisan support for a church committee. There's no curiosity on the other side about what's happening inside the deep state. And that's really my question. Who is running the deep state?
That didn't work.
I've got example after example in agency after agency. Very, very legitimate oversight requests. I subpoena documents. You don't get squat. Now, I asked for your testimony last night, and I realized, and I really appreciate the fact that the committee staff and Chairman Paul is very, very concerned about retaliation against you. Apparently, they didn't clear your testimony here at the CIA. Is that true?
No.
So you're appearing as a true whistleblower, publicly right off the bat. I'll do, and I'm sure Senator Paul and the staff will do everything we can to prevent retaliation. What is your game plan after this? You're done with the in DNI and the DIG organization. What do you plan going back to CIA?
I returned to CIA on, was it April? I'm back at CIA. I just took a couple of weeks vacation after it was a long year and I was tired, so I took some time off.
So were you welcome back?
I just arrived and I've got a desk and they're talking to me about what comes next.
I mean, do you have any concerns about me keeping this? Because originally we said you can't keep this after the hearing, but it sounds like now I can keep it. I mean, do you have a concern? Because again, I don't want to harm you in terms of what you've written here. I haven't had a chance to go through it yet.
You can keep it.
Okay. Should we distribute this publicly?
Please hold on that.
For the time being, I will. John Radcliffe was very helpful when he was in that position at DNI.
Can't seem to put a GIF up there. Let me try it.
To the CIA.
From Facebook or YouTube.
What is preventing the CIA from totally cooperating with the DNI?
I don't know.
What would you've been in the CIA? Who's running this show?
Here's what I'll say. We had requests. We have a formal process that we sent those requests over, and I detailed in the transcribed interview the dates and what those requests were for. It appeared to be bureaucratic slow rolling until the government shutdown happened.
Well, that is the technique they use.
Yes.
I mean, they look at every administration or every director of CIA, and if they don't agree with them, this too shall pass, right? They just wait them out. I mean, that's happening right now in both of our investigations. So, again, I am calling for a church-like commission. We'll call it the Paul Johnson Commission, okay? We need to figure out who runs the deep state. But in my final 3 minutes, because I held what I thought was a blockbuster hearing 2 weeks ago.
It was very good.
And this is on my investigation in terms of the harms done by the COVID injection. And I'm going to talk about it right now because it's not being covered by the legacy media. Alternate media, yes.
That's part of the reason why I'm doing it.
Had me on. I went on, supposed to be on CNN last week. And I sent him my report and told him that's what I want to talk about. They canceled the appearance. Oh, that's not why. Sure it is. So this is what, and I can do this in 2 minutes and 20 seconds. This is what we uncovered. This is what is being covered up by now the legacy media. On March 1st of 2021, Dr. Peter Marks, head of CBER, the organization within FDA that approves vaccines and also is supposed to surveil those vaccines post-market for safety, was given a multi-page briefing by the main data mining analyst within FDA working with the inventor of the algorithm they used to analyze the VAERS, the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. That briefing told Dr. Marks that the current algorithm, because of the nature of the massive number of claims coming into VAERS, by the way, from 1990 until 2020, on average, about 280 deaths were reported in VAERS associated with the vaccine. 2021 is over 21,000. Nothing to see here. But anyway, so they're using an algorithm. They were warned that this algorithm, because the Moderna and Pfizer are so close together, the way they're analyzing is going to mask and hide safety signals. That's March 1st, 2021. 26 days later, a new state-of-the-art algorithm, developed by the inventor of the original algorithm, was presented to senior FDA officials, showing 49 cases of extreme masking, 25 safety signals, including sudden cardiac death, pulmonary infarction, Bell's palsy, different types of strokes. Month after month after month, they continue to do this data mining. They continue to show additional safety signals. Did Peter Marks, did Anthony Fauci, did President Biden go to the American public and say,
my friend Lisa Johnson died 7 minutes after getting the jab. They killed her in 7 minutes.
hang on here. We've got some data. We've got some concerns. No. They blame the unvaccinated for continuing the pandemic. This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. We need to mandate this. This is what government does. This is what the deep state does. I can't explain it all. My investigation now, because I finally got documents. This would never have happened if we didn't have documents. And by the way, just like we found that David Morin's email.
That means the government knew the truth.
That now has resulted in prosecution, where, he has a FOIA, you showed him how to make emails disappear. If you send me something sensitive to my Gmail, we have the same types of evidence in our report. We need to get to the bottom of this, and right now I'm just using this moment. I need the mainstream media, CBS, ABC, CNN, to step forward and start covering what is a major scandal. How many thousands, tens, hundreds of thousands of people are permanently disabled or possibly lost their life because our FDA hid the fact that there were safety signals screaming at them with the COVID injection. So again, you can't answer all my questions in terms of but we need to figure out who is running this deep state. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Johnson, I completely concur with the call for a church committee, but I'll tell you how difficult it is. Church committee was like 1975, 50 some odd years ago. I've been trying to get the classified version of the church committee for over 2 years, but I'm being blocked by the Intel committee, including someone from our own party is blocking having me. They've shown me a room with 400 boxes, and I can go look in all the boxes to see if I can find it. My staff's not allowed to go in the room. No. But they will not reveal to me something that's 50 years old that should be declassified for the public, much less for me.
Maybe we should go together. It probably only takes us about 4 or 5 years to dig through all the boxes.
That's right. Senator Hawley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Erdman, thank you for being here. In March of 2023, the Senate unanimously passed legislation requiring the Office of the Director of National Intelligence to declassify all, I believe the exact language is, declassify any and all information related to potential links between the Wuhan Institute of Virology and the origins of COVID-19. I have some familiarity with this legislation because I wrote it. It passed the House unanimously. President Biden signed it into law under, I think, popular duress. As you may remember, well, first of all, are you familiar with this law?
Oh, of course, yes.
As you may recall, it set a statutory deadline of just a couple of months later, which the Biden administration promptly ignored and blew through. When they finally did release the report, I think we've got a picture of it here that'll appear over my shoulder. It was all of 5 pages. Yeah. Here it is. Wait for it. 5 pages. Remember, the law says any and all information. 5 pages, heavily redacted, even the 5 pages. I think one of those pages is like a cover note or something. Yeah, here it is. The executive summary, 5 pages. This is, according to the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, this is any and all information related to COVID-19 and the Wuhan Virology Lab.
Really,
now,
4 pages.
You've been on this task force that has reviewed these documents. Is this all the information the United States government had?
that is not all of the information. And
Not even close.
classified report being written at the time all of this was going on. And I assumed as I'm reading through the documents that they would just take that classified report, which didn't look like that, and they would just redact it. And because I'm reading through the documents, but that is not what happened. They decided to write a different paper instead of what was already.
Who you say they? Who's they?
The National Intelligence Council.
The National Intelligence Council was at the time that the law passed was doing a thorough review, or doing a review. We don't know how thorough. How many pages? You've been on this task force. You've gotten a sense of, if it's not 5 pages, how many pages worth of information would you guess the United States government was in possession of related to Wuhan lab and COVID possible links?
I can tell you that Director Gabbard is working through, I believe, 2,000 pages.
2,000?
They're trying to get released in the first batch. This is the law states yes, any and all, but there's still the requirement to run it through the different agencies to ensure that there's not some sources and methods. But there's like 2,000 pages.
2,000 pages. 2,000 pages. I want to show you what Admiral Haynes, Director Haynes, said to me when I wrote to her, Senator Braun and I wrote to her following this outrageous, ridiculous report. She wrote back to me and said, well, we declassified only what we could without endangering sources and methods. Only what we could. 5 pages of summary that itself has redactions.
What sources and methods would you have in terms of medical stuff? What are they, secret people overseas that they got to hide their identities?
The 5 pages have redactions. And you're telling me there are literally thousands of documents. Why are they hiding all of this material?
I can tell you that the interagency process of declassification is highly bureaucratic, and that is being worked. And I think you saw just a few days ago, Director Gabbard released some information about the labs.
Was Director Haynes, Admiral Haynes, was she involved in making the decision not to release the material?
I don't have any proof that she was involved in the direct decision. I have no emails saying that directly, but
it was her office, and it's her signature on the letter to me. It's her office that sent the 5 pages. She's the one who said, this is what we have. This is all we have. You're telling me there were 2,000 plus documents.
No, I'm
they
telling you
sent us
that
5.
the first swath of documents that we're looking to, there's many more than that.
I got you. Many
more than
Let me tell you what this so-called 5-page report, what it said in its substance, to the extent there was any. They said, number one, that nothing that was researched at the Wuhan lab could plausibly be a progenitor of SARS-CoV-2. Number two, they said there is no evidence of any research-related incident involving Wuhan employees that might have been related to the pandemic. Now, in your experience, given what you have seen, are those true statements?
Some of that would have to be covered and classified, but no, they're not true.
Uh-huh.
If we wanted to get into details, I don't believe that's true.
So the United States government first deliberately violated a law passed by Congress, signed by the president, that ordered them to release all information related to the Wuhan lab, number one. Number two, they then violated the law again by withholding thousands and thousands of pages that they had at the time and knew were covered by the law. And number three, the conclusions, so-called, they released to the public are false. If that is not a cover-up, I don't know what is. And if our elected officials and unelected officials, in this case, in the IC and ODNI, if they can get by with blatantly violating the statutes of this country and lying to the American people, I'm sorry, but we don't have a democracy anymore.
Because nothing ever happens to them, that's why.
I don't know what it is, but it's not a democracy because we, the people, aren't in charge. These people are in charge, and they're lying to us every single day. You said in your opening statement that Dr. Fauci, speaking of someone who's not exactly a truth teller, that Dr. Fauci intervened to put his thumb on the scale of what information the intelligence community, the IC, could review when they did their initial assessments of whether or not the Wuhan lab was linked to COVID. What exactly did he do?
So let me clarify that. So he reached in and he provided this list of scientists and subject matter experts that we should talk to. And it's not like he's saying, you will go talk to them. He doesn't have the power to do that technically. It's just that
If you can't get them that way, I would go follow the money.
the bureaucracy in place at the time was perfectly happy to pursue those recommendations, even when there was a number of individuals who expressed concern, saying, at least one for sure, that said, are you sure we want to do this? He's a policymaker, and we need to have our intelligence cycle.
And he had a point of view, did he not?
He certainly did. And here's
And what was that point of view? Just refresh our memories.
Well, that's okay.
He believes it's natural origin. He still does.
I'm still on this issue. I'm waiting for more people to come in before I get to Starmer stuff.
Of course. I mean, he said this over and over. Now, he would have reason to, given that
35 minutes left
he supported gain of function research to the Wuhan lab, lied about it to Congress, lied about it repeatedly to the chairman, as I recall. So his hands are dirty in this. And yet here he is intervening behind the scenes. It's bad enough that he's out there misleading the public. Behind the scenes, he's trying to intervene to stop our own intelligence community who are supposed to
It's showing how bad our CIA and Fauci were working together against us.
work for the public from actually accurately assessing the evidence. This is unbelievable. This is unbelievable. And then people wonder, gee, why are the American people not trusting of elected officials? I wonder, why are they? I'll tell you why, because we are repeatedly lied to by these people. Lied to and lied to and lied to. I want to thank you, Mr. Erdman, for your testimony.
Our own government's trying to get the information.
The surface here.
And
thank
the
you,
deep
Mr.
state's
Chairman, for calling this hearing.
blocking them.
I just want to point out, when you've got a witness who's saying under oath that the report that the government issued lied to the American people, that it is false, we've got a big problem in this country. We've got a big, big problem, and we haven't begun to solve it yet. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Moody.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this is one of the most important hearings we will hold during this administration. I think when the country went mad, and I don't care if you consider yourself a blue state or a red state, the country went mad, and people were craving leadership and leadership that truly was based on science, not someone that alleged they were following science and seemed to care more about controlling the public. I think this is one of the most important hearings, and I think everyone that actually showed up today, and you see who is here involved and taking part in this hearing, are the ones that want, on behalf of the American people, who are, by the way, are supposed to be in charge of the United States of America, want to get to the bottom of what happened, and not just because that's right, so that the people that are in charge of this nation understood what happened, but so that this never happens again. And if we are trying to prevent a government that is trying to control a populace based on nothing, based on no justification, and making sure that that never happens again, I just want it to be very clear to everyone in this room, or anyone who has taken the time to watch, that cares about their country and understands what it means to protect freedom. I just want them to see who showed up today and who is participating.
No Democrats.
And who has thanked you for coming out bravely and
Democrats are the ones who are paid by the drug companies.
disclosing these facts,
time.
what happened, and your opinion based on your years, decades of experience. I, for one, hailing from the great free state of Florida. Florida used to be known for flamingos. We're now known for freedom. That is because what took place over the last administration, and when churches were closed, when businesses were closed, when schools were closed, when people were shut up in their apartments, when families were prohibited from socializing and gathering, many were kept from their loved ones when they died, all under this guidance of government leading based on science. We really have to go back and question that, because that cannot happen in this country. And I think many of us that were in charge at the time question how we ever allowed that to happen. And certainly in Florida, I am so proud, along with Governor DeSantis, we led against that tide in many respects. And when people were still being told to stay at home, don't let your kids go to school, don't go to church, all of these things that seem insane right now, we didn't. We stood up for the truth. We tried our best to discern what was true, what was not, what didn't make sense. And let me tell you why things didn't make sense. And first of all, you had your Secretary of HHS, which was basically invisible, checked out. Those are words of the Biden administration at the time. Officials from the Biden administration said Secretary Becerra was invisible, checked out, an unfortunate choice for the role. And then you had Dr. Fauci, who came out and contradicted himself constantly. At one point, he even admitted later, he told people shouldn't be walking around with masks on. And later he said that was because we were trying to control the supply for healthcare professionals. It wasn't
He's
based
lying.
on any science.
It was
But
a
then
part of the
later he told
scare tactic.
everyone to wear masks repeatedly. The 6-foot rule seemed to have been just crafted out of thin air with no basis in science whatsoever. In fact, he said that rule sort of just appeared when he testified, and that guidance on the shutdown of schools and small businesses was arbitrary and not based on any science. So I just want to make sure the American people hear that. You had a government who's supposed to be limited and stay out of people's lives, coming in and offering guidance. Many times it was done under mandates.
Hey, John.
To close businesses, people's livelihoods.
John, not one Democrat showed up to this hearing where they were releasing all the lies on the COVID jab stuff and all the information they're hiding.
To keep children from being educated, to keep
Not one
people
Democrat.
from expressing their faith and gathering to show freedom of religion and their faith and expression. I mean, unbelievable what happened.
They knew that they were
during
killing us.
the COVID years. I was so proud of my state, along with Governor DeSantis. We launched a grand jury investigation because the federal government sure wasn't doing it. And we got to the bottom of some of this, what was being said publicly by those that we had trusted in these positions, and how that was not actually the truth. And the science, that was where the name, the Free State of Florida, has come from. And I'm so glad now to be here as one of the newest United States senators, bringing that experience, that grand jury investigation, everything that we did differently in Florida and stood up to the madness, because that is how the people remain in charge of their government. In the grand jury investigation that we did, we followed the evidence. We found that many of those policies, including masking, lockdown mandates, they lack sufficient scientific basis, and they in fact caused significant harm to Floridians.
Bingo!
The same grand jury found a pattern. I'm quoting the grand jury here. This is a nonpartisan group acquired from the community to judge facts, a pattern of deceptive and obfuscatory behavior from both Big Pharma and the federal agencies charged with regulating them with respect to the COVID vaccines. So it appears from everything that we found from our own investigation, an unbiased, totally separate review of what was being said publicly by the federal government compared to what was actually based in science. It found that most of what was said and the events surrounding it was a public health establishment that was fixated on controlling the public and forcing narratives rather than protecting public health or discovering the truth. And so I am
They had to keep making their money off from us.
Grateful that you were willing to be here today. I know that this is under subpoena, but certainly it takes courage and to be here and to be a whistleblower that can get accountability for the American people.
And people like myself are losing YouTube and Facebook and channels because if it went against the narrative on the jab, they took you down. They silenced you.
You know, Florida was years ahead of the federal government's supposed experts. We're proud of that, but this is so important. And so I want to know, and I have one question. We're getting to the what. What happened? We were glad that Florida led on that. Even while people remained locked down, we were trying to get to the answers. What happened? But in all of your reviews and what you've been able to compile and what you're saying today, what is the why? Why?
Why did the cover-up happen? I think there's a lot of
And the CIA was part of it.
Misaligned incentives that have been created because of this highly opaque and complex system of laboratories, life science research. And the IC is just one component
And they want to keep getting their government money. That's why. So they had to say it worked regardless.
of that. Why did it happen inside the CIA and inside DNI and inside the interagency space when they were doing the analysis over the course of 4 years? Part of it is iron rice bowls. Your normal bureaucratic issues where one agency has this, another agency has that. There was groupthink. You could see it happening in real time as you read from beginning to end.
So safe spaces where you could only think one way or else.
I'll give you a couple examples. Every time there was an open source publication that came out, they're very good at grabbing that and kicking it up for the contracted scientists, the BSEG, to take a look at and assess. And the goal, it seemed...
Yeah, I'm on like YouTube 24. They've taken that many channels from me.
It always leaned one direction. They never took the publications from Sorensen and Dalglish, who came out very early. I think it was July 2020 that one of the best papers written was open source by Sorensen and Dalglish. They never took those papers and said, wow, we've got a lot here, we need to make sure we get this added in. Or Dr. Stephen Quay, for example, who had a lot to say about COVID origins. It was always one direction, and because the interagency space seemed intent on pushing it that way, and why the interagency space? I think the interagency space, I'm talking about the National Intelligence Council and the people responsible for that. I mean, these are people who have relationships with the National Academy of Scientists and the National Academy of Sciences. They've got relationships with the WMD community, and they're all part of the same, ecosystem. The planets are all revolving around the same star. And so you get groupthink. There's a multitude of reasons. I didn't find any smoking gun where they said, well, we got to cover this up because for sure the US government paid for research in Wuhan, China. But they were certainly well aware of PREDICT. They were well aware of the diffuse proposal that had circulated. They had those products available to them. I think you get enough people shouting something down, it gets shouted down. And that happened repeatedly. I do want to just, if I can take just a moment, particularly about the scientists that are brought forward. I really want to emphasize a couple things. And one of it is we can't vilify these scientists. I'm going to give a very short anecdote, and I hope I'm not going over on time or anything like that. But when I got hired to the CIA, I can't tell you how proud I was. I really couldn't believe that they hired me. I'm sure there's some friends who are like, yeah, I can't believe it either. But they hired me because they saw potential to be able to be somebody who could recruit spies and steal secrets. That's my job. Imagine you're a scientist. Imagine the US government comes to you and says, listen, sir, you are a specialist in a field no one else knows about. And in fact, the whole point of a PhD is to push beyond what's known further than anybody else in a very rarefied field. Imagine you're a scientist and the CIA comes up to you and says, or the NIC, the intelligence community, comes up to you and says, you're special, not because we see potential, but because we know you're special and we need your help. We can't vilify these people who wanted to help. We can, however, boy, I might be contradicting myself here, but the system definitely needs a look because the system has been put in place now and you've got these same people that we've said, you're important to the IC. We just haven't done the proper work to ensure that those people who are important to the IC aren't cross-pollinated all over in other places so that they can incentivize the kind of research that we need done or the white papers we need written. We have to have a holistic overview. And I think it's really hard to have like one agency do their review, another agency do their review, the legislative branch do their review. In this case, it is a team sport.
So one answer also, Senator Moody, to your question about the why, people think, well, gosh, was there a conspiracy where all these evil people had their hands together and they were conspiring to do something bad? And I think George Carlin put it the best. He said, it isn't required that you come up with a conspiracy where interests converge. And I think the interest is we funded a lot of dangerous research. Accidents have happened. This was an accident. In all likelihood, this was an accident. Even the Chinese probably didn't want this to happen in Wuhan. It was an accident. But the interest is that if you funded that research for 10 years, wouldn't I logically want to ask you why you did this funding? And so there are dozens of people throughout government who did cover this up, maybe hundreds. They don't even know each other necessarily, but they had a hand in funding this research through the years. They've been in favor of it. It's been a big debate. For 20 some odd years, there's been a huge debate, maybe longer. People think this is the first virus that got out. One of the most, it's not as much reported, but one of the most famous viruses that got out was the Russian flu of 1977. And we're not sure it came from Russia or where it came from. But the interesting thing is nobody over 24 got the flu. Zero, not one person. Why? Because the Russian flu of 1977 had the exact same RNA structure as a flu in 1953 that had been kept in a lab somewhere. How do you get an identical virus 30 years later? Viruses mutate every couple of months like COVID has. There is no way to have an identical virus unless you got it from a lab. So proof positive that the 1977 flu actually came out of a lab. An accident, once again, an accident. There's a woman who's written about this. I think her last name is Young. She says that over a period of years, like 1,500 major accidents that she's cataloged. So it's not only about malfeasance, it's about safety of these labs. In fact, some people were finally convinced that this came from Wuhan because it was a BSL-2 instead of a BSL-4 for much of the time, that it didn't have enough safety precautions. But even the safest one, the 4, still has accidents. So maybe some of these experiments, we ought to reconsider whether we do them.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And it just goes to show why it's helpful to have a doctor as our chairman. You could also be a witness.
Thank you. We're going to conclude pretty quickly. I'm going to give Senator Johnson another chance if you have another question.
I've got a quick question that I want to go someplace else. In September 2023, we apparently had a CIA whistleblower come forward, and there are news articles written about this, that 6 of the 7 analysts to describe this were bribed to change their analysis. Is that true?
No. So there's some clarifications on that. What is true, and I thank you for bringing up this question, Senator Johnson, because this is one of the things I wanted to make sure the record was corrected. So, and if I have just a few minutes here to sort of talk through this, there was new information that came out in 2022, and it forced the community to try and conduct a relook. There were 10 CIA scientists, I'm talking from the CIA side now, not on the NICS side, 10 CIA scientists that were said, why don't you go ahead and do a COVID relook? On that team, there were 7 SMEs, subject matter experts, technical experts with lab experience, medical experience, and so they began their relook. And by the time they wrote their paper, they wrote a paper and they said, we're assessing this as a lab leak. 8 of the 10, according to multiple whistleblowers, 8 of the 10 were definitely leaning in on lab leak. They sent that paper, that draft paper, up to the Weapons and Counterproliferation Center front office and said, take a look. And magically, a new report shows up that allegedly contradicted the information that had come in earlier that year. The multiple people we spoke to said, yeah, it didn't really contradict it. But they were told, go back to the drawing board and do a reassessment. So the interagency got involved. They were having discussions. So they go back to the drawing board. And by the time 2023 rolls around, they've got their answer. They say, 6 of the 7 technical people on that team. So there's 10 people on the team. 6 of the 7 technical experts say, yep, we still think it's a lab leak. We still think it's a lab leak. And they were sticking to their guns. Management changed the analytic line. They changed the conclusion to a non-consensus call. Actually, worse than that, they said that the exact words were, I don't want to get this wrong. Excuse me. We may never precisely know the origin of SARS-CoV-2. Precisely. Precisely is not a term analysts use. They use like low confidence, medium confidence, yes, no. Precisely is a word you use when you want to deliberately end discussion. Because do you know how many resources we need to precisely know the origin of SARS-CoV-2?
So again, I want the chairman to indulge me a little bit more here. There's no bribes paid. This is just a management decision. They overrode what the, okay.
But the financial piece definitely needs to be looked into because they did receive an EPA.
Bingo!
They got it. It's
the money part, you got to look into the money.
$1,500.
Okay, so it may be true then.
No. Let me be very clear. There were no bribes. They received an exceptional performance award. They were upset with it, and it was not a bribe. But what I will say,
okay,
the people who
they were rewarded for.
I don't see a way.
They didn't know they were going to get it.
Okay,
they were not.
I'll try to type later.
I got you. And I understand this distinction. 1 point and 1 question. Just received this from Liz Lyon, the CIA Director of Public Affairs. The committee acted in bad faith by subpoenaing an agency officer for testimony today without notifying CIA. Despite having already obtained closed-door testimony from the individual previously, the witness testifying today is not appearing as a whistleblower in pursuit of the truth, but instead in response to the subpoena issued by Chairman Paul. This proceeding amounts to nothing more than a dishonest political theater masquerading as a congressional hearing, as the CIA has already assessed COVID-19 most likely originated from the lab leak, and efforts to undermine that conclusion are disingenuous. I'm calling on CIA Director Radcliffe and this person to apologize to Chairman Paul and this committee. This is not political theater. I have years and years and years of built-up frustration of agencies like snubbing our oversight, giving us the big middle finger. And that's really leads me to my question. You talked about how proud you were. Okay, I can imagine that. My belief is I'd say most people serving in government, all these agencies, are doing good work. They're patriots. Why aren't there more people like you? I mean, you saw Senator Hawley's, the 5-page snub, the 5-page middle finger saying, any and all, this is it. And people inside the agencies know that's not the truth.
We know it's not the truth.
That is a big, fat lie. What happens inside the agency that people, good Americans, patriotic Americans, people who believe in democracy, witness that and realize the agency they're working for is lying bold-faced to legitimate congressional oversight, legitimate congressional investigations to the American people. What is causing this?
2 answers. 1, we need more leaders like Director Gabbard, who pulls together a task force of people to actually pursue this, despite the difficulty in wrangling agencies to do the right thing. I think the second thing I'll say is it's a minority of officers. I mean, most of the people joining the CIA are barrel-chested freedom fighters. Like, they're out there wanting to do the right thing. As you matriculate upwards into the bureaucracy, I just think that it gets easier and easier to find people who are more willing to get along. And you know, if we want to link this back to COVID, you had a bunch of refuseniks out there that said no, and they were trying to push these people out. And what you really need in these organizations are, you can't have the whole organization saying no to everything because nothing gets done. But you got to retain the people who are sometimes a little more difficult to deal with, more willing to say no over and over. And I think we've created a milquetoast bureaucracy. When I first joined the agency, the chiefs of offices had a lot of power. you know. And then modernization happened, and they watered everything down, and the accountability piece has to be there. Otherwise, this is just going to keep happening.
Well, again, I appreciate you coming forward. Again, I'm calling on Director Radcliffe and that communications person. This committee, this chairman needs an apology. This is not political theater. This is serious oversight work. This is what the American people need to see. And I just wish our Democrat colleagues had any level of curiosity what's happening inside the deep state. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and I completely concur. And I would also like to respond to the CIA spokesman. They say that we have already obtained closed-door testimony. Well, closed-door testimony doesn't provide oversight. Public testimony provides oversight. We have asked them for public testimony and for oversight. We would love to have the scientists, the 6 or 7 scientists that were commissioned to look at this, we'd love to see their report. Why would we not be allowed to see their report? I can't even read that in private. But that should be.
Yeah, why would that be secret? Why can't we, the people, find out?
Public, the science. If there are sources and methods, mark them out, redact them. But we should be able to see that. But
why would those sources and methods be a secret? I mean, they're scientists.
For them to have the gall to say, oh, we allowed the witness to testify in private and that should be enough. No, you were told by Congress unanimously to declassify this material, and you send us 5 pages. Imagine how many, you mentioned maybe 2,000 pages. DOE has a report. That's got to be 40 or 50 pages, but the base documents for DOE's report are probably run into the hundreds of pages just for that one report. And they did a great.
It's our own government.
Great analysis of this, but still most of that is not available to the public. Why does
it's not like they're talking to spies or something like that? Why sources and methods need to be protected?
Need to be available because this is going to happen again, and
you're protecting Big Med.
We need to be prepared, and we need to talk about it. One of the other things we didn't get to in this hearing, but we need to talk to, how do you prepare for the next pandemic? Well, one of the things that actually worked was monoclonal antibodies. We need to be talking about how we can quickly produce them again, how we can quickly get started on things like that. What worked and what didn't work. Masks didn't work. 6 feet of distancing, there was no science. They say, follow the science.
In fact, the masks make you sicker. You touch stuff and you get it on the mask and the germs and stuff like that, besides suffocating yourself.
And yet it looks like everything that happened at the CIA was the politicians overruling the scientists. The scientists were concluding this came from the lab, from a lab leak, in all probability. The politicians were overturning them once at 2 in the morning. So that is one of the takeaways from this, is that, yes, follow the science and the scientists, and that the scientists need to not have a conflict of interest, which leads me to the final point I'll make before we conclude. I applaud the Trump administration for an executive order saying no more gain of function. It is head and shoulders above anything. The Biden administration really didn't do much of anything on this. The Trump administration is trying to live by that. The reason it won't work forever is that people who have a Weasley way with words, let's say Anthony Fauci, will come back into play, and half of his lieutenants probably still work over there. One of them will get in power again, and all they will simply say is, oh, creating that new virus that grows 10 times faster and grows better in human cells, oh, that's not gain of function. Because that's what Anthony Fauci was doing. He was still doing the gain of function research. He was just saying, oh, the way I look at the definition, that's not really. So we do need a commission. And what I proposed is the Risky Research Review Act. There'll be a presidential commission. It'll have scientists on it. They will be experts, but they will not be currently in the employ of government competing for grants. I think that is a conflict of interest. They have to be people outside of it. There also will be some people who are national security experts as well. And we have to look at the list of things. One scientist, Dr. Esfelt, ordered off the internet under Biden's policy. He ordered snippets of DNA from here and here, chopped them up, put them together, and he made the Spanish flu. Now, he told the FBI he was doing it because he wanted to prove a point. He didn't create the infectious portion of the Spanish flu, but he said, look, I can do it by just ordering DNA. So there are a lot of things that have to be addressed. And unfortunately, it's somehow a partisan issue and we're not getting anywhere. But I want to applaud you for your courage.
It's a cover-up that gets them.
In coming forward, you did come forward at the response of a subpoena. That is a lawful subpoena, and I see no reason that anyone should try to punish you. If anybody does try to punish you, I can promise you that we will defend you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator
Meeting is
Paul.
adjourned. Thank you. Yep. I would like to thank our witness for joining us here today to share his testimony and expertise with the committee. The record for this hearing will remain open until 5 p.m. on Wednesday, May 13th, 2026 for the submission of statements and questions. For the record, the hearing is now adjourned. Thank you.
Not sure if they had any more. Hold on. I guess they were done. Okay. I don't know. I know they're lying to us like hell. Let me bring up a couple other videos before I get to the best one. The takedown today was unbelievable. So, before I do Starmer, let's do a little humor. It looks like he's going to lose his election. He's in Kentucky.
It's all the same thing.
He's going to lose in his primary. He certainly is in America first. I wish Tammy was here for the next one, because it's going to be about opening a Islamic Center University in Texas. This is the next one. This is about the Islamic
Imagine
Center.
You're in Richardson, Texas, a quiet suburb just north of Dallas. Nice neighborhood, good schools. And someone quietly opens the doors to what they're calling a brand new university, offering bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, and things like artificial intelligence, computer science, cybersecurity, health informatics. All the courses are blended with, and this is mandatory, not optional, Islamic studies coursework. And they start recruiting students internationally. They even have a special program to enroll students from Pakistan. No U.S. visa required. Just one problem. They never asked Texas for permission. And Texas just found out. Hey gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, your Patriot Professor, celebrating yet another glorious day in the Trumpian golden age that you may another continue to change the world in ways you never even imagined. You know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. So let me introduce you to an organization registered with the Texas Secretary of State as the Texas American Muslim Institute of Technology at Dallas. But don't call it that, because they don't call it that. They call it, and I want you to notice every single word here, Texas American Muslim University at Dallas, or just simply Tex AM University. Kind of sounds like Texas A&M, doesn't it? Well, we'll come back to that in a moment. Now, Tex AM is reportedly based out of a building at 1100 East Campbell Road in Richardson, which, by the way, is the same building that houses the Dallas Diyanet Mosque and the Islamic Seminary of America. So it isn't exactly a standalone campus the size of UT Austin or anything like that. But you wouldn't know that from their website. Their website described Tex AM as, quote, the first university in the United States offering STEM degree programs combined with mandatory Islamic study courses. Mandatory, note, not optional, not a minor elective on the side. Mandatory Islamic studies for every student in every program. And they weren't shy about it. They were aggressively marketing bachelor's degrees in computer science, IT, cybersecurity, and health informatics, a master's degree in AI, artificial intelligence. They were advertising online enrollment. And here's the part that really got people's attention. Apparently, they had a special initiative allowing Pakistani
Now, this is in Texas, Tammy. This is happening in Texas.
Students to earn a TEX-AM bachelor's degree without ever applying for a U.S. student visa. Now, think about that. A Texas-based, quote, university with no state authorization, no accreditation, sharing a building with a mosque, offering degrees to foreign nationals overseas, no visa required. And in literally no time, Texas officials noticed. On May 7th, Governor Greg Abbott personally directed the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board to issue a formal cease and desist order against TEX-AM. Abbott posted on X, quote, I directed the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board to issue a cease and desist to TEX-AM, an unauthorized Islamic educational institution operating illegally in Texas. If they refuse to comply, legal action will follow. Texas will not allow illegal educational institutions to operate in our state. The Texas Higher Education Board's letter was absolutely devastating in its specificity. Under Chapter 61 of the Texas Education Code, any private post-secondary institution operating in Texas must hold a certificate of authority issued by the state before it can offer courses or grant degrees. Now, obviously, TEX-AM has never held that certificate, not once. They never applied. They never received approval. They simply started calling themselves a university and went into business. The letter spelled out the violations in clinical terms. First, TEX-AM is prohibited by law from granting or offering to grant degrees. Second, even using the word...
They're not the Texas A&M, you know. They made the name very similar so they could bring all these illegals in and on our dime pay for their college to become scientists and stuff.
University without a certificate of authority is a separate criminal violation under Texas law. Third, the advertising of degree programs must stop immediately. Fourth, all student enrollment must stop immediately. And the deadline for that, May 8th, the following day. This was issued on May 7th. The deadline was May 8th. They were given literally 24 hours to comply, 1 day to sign a letter confirming that they had voluntarily, permanently, and immediately ceased all advertising, enrollment, and use of protected terms. Failure to comply, referral to the Texas Attorney General and local district attorneys for criminal prosecution. That's not a slap on the wrist. That's Texas saying you're done. But if you thought it stopped there, you'd be wrong. If you thought one cease and desist letter was enough for 1 week, hold on. This is Texas, and things were about to get a whole lot worse. But first, gang, what if I told you there's a little-known arbitrage play hiding inside a Palo or type BK Muslim University's problems? The very next day after they got that.
So this is a Muslim university bringing in people from around the world to go to school here, and we're paying for it.
Cease and desist letter from the state. Texas A&M University dropped their own cease and desist letter. Texas A&M Chancellor Glenn Hagar posted, quote, the Texas A&M...
Of course, they'll stay here after the fact.
University system has a responsibility to protect the name and trademarks which represent more than a century of academic excellence, public trust, and institutional integrity. When another organization uses branding that's similar, particularly in the same educational space, we must act to prevent confusion and protect the value of those marks. At this point, between the state of Texas and the Texas A&M University system, both coming after them,
they are.
Legal exposure for this Islamic organization.
They don't have the and in the middle. They have A-M and not the and the plus sign.
Was extraordinary, and they folded. They folded very, very fast. In fact, I visited their website today and found it was down. Now,
John, you're going to miss a funny part. Come back later. Come back later and rewind and watch it. I got a funny part coming up.
Now, there is a rather
You're gonna love it. You'll probably be rolling on the floor.
interesting political connection to all of this. The mayor of this town, Richardson, just north of Dallas, is a fellow by the name of Amir Omar. And as you may have guessed, yes, he is a Muslim. I believe he's the first Muslim to be elected to political office in North Texas. And as it turns out, he happened to publicly endorse this Tex AM project. Now, of course, Mayor Omar has the right to endorse whatever educational initiatives he chooses, but the optics of the sitting mayor of Richardson publicly backing an unaccredited institution that was operating outside state law, that's bad enough. But the optics of a Muslim mayor backing an unaccredited institution, aggressively recruiting
Geez, I wonder how that happens once you get Muslim mayors, huh?
overseas students through a no visa program, particularly from Pakistan. That's a story worth noting. Now, if you don't know, Richardson is part of what's often called the Muslim belt of the Dallas suburbs, with one of the largest Muslim populations in Texas. And when local political figures are actively championing institutions with which they share a religious affinity, but they're flouting
The thing is, they're bringing in people from out of the country.
state educational law, it does raise legitimate questions about oversight and accountability. Now, this wasn't the first time we saw something akin to this in Texas. In Josephine, Texas, a thriving suburb, yes, north of Dallas, for the last several years, right under the nose of local officials, a radical Islamic organization has been quietly building what amounted to a self-contained parallel society, complete with its own mosque, its own Islamic school, its own medical clinic, 74 homes sold exclusively to affiliated Muslims, a Muslim-only enclave right
Yeah, try to get a house in there. Good luck with that.
here
Not
in the
gonna
United
happen.
States of America in Texas. They called it Epic City, but Texans called it something else. And then they did something about it. The planned city was shut down by the combined force of Governor Abbott, Attorney General Paxton, 12 state agencies, and a HUD fair housing investigation. Texas Republican primary voters then went to the ballot box and voted 95% in favor of banning Sharia law from Texas courts, and Governor Abbott wasted no time signing that ban into law. What we're seeing
Even if they had 95%, you're not going to override that.
playing out here in Texas is a radically cultural form of politics known as civilizational populism. And it's reshaping the entire landscape of Western democracies in ways that neither the left nor the establishment right fully understands yet. So this isn't your grandfather's culture war here. This isn't an argument about tax rates or regulatory policies. This is something far deeper. It's a civilizational reckoning. People across the Western world are waking up to the fact that their way of life, their history, their faith, their families, their very identity as a people is not guaranteed. It has to be defended. Civilizational populism says
This is
borders
true.
matter, culture matters,
That's
heritage
true.
matters. And when
True that.
institutions, the universities, the media, the courts, the administrative state stop serving the civilization that built them, the people have not just the right, but the duty to reclaim them. And so what's so extraordinary about this moment is that it's not a fringe movement anymore. You're watching civilizational populism govern. You're watching it legislate. You're watching it reshape courts, shut down rogue institutions, defend sovereign borders, and project military power in defense of Western strategic interests. This is civilizational populism, not in theory, but in action. And the people driving it, they're not going back. After all, you never mess with Texas.
Amen. Amen. He does a good job all the time. All right, I'm going to get on to the Britain stuff. Peter Orange here, I don't know how you say his name, Peter, talks about the Labour Party losing 1,500 seats. or about 1,500.
The British establishment just had their wigs handed to them in local elections, where the right populace won almost as many seats.
Next one, I'll do the one where Starmer gets really roasted in the House of Commons or the Parliament.
As both ruling parties
really good.
combined. This is roughly like Trump running
I had
as an
to watch it
independent
twice.
and near matching both the Democrats and the Republicans. Ruling Labor lost 1,500 seats. Think of them like state legislators in the U.S. The establishment conservative, Tories, lost 500, replaced by populist Nigel Farage's Reform Party that went from 2 seats to 1,453, along with anti-establishment Greens, who picked up 400 seats as they become the party of British Muslims and vegan cat ladies. Put it together, and Britain's
Vegan
mainstream
cat
parties
ladies.
won just 1 in 3 seats. It's a spectacular rejection of Britain's spectacularly unpopular Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who's currently polling 18%, comfortably ahead of dying of dysentery. But like a true 18% man, Keir said voters are really angry because he hasn't changed things fast enough, as in voters love his stabby third worlders, two-tier policing, and Facebook gulags. They just want more. So what changes? Alas, these are local elections. National is where all the action's at for migration, police, welfare, jobs, and inflation. So at best, we could see tweaks in DEI and anti-white racism, some pushback to migrant welfare and woke school curriculum, and a lot more transparency with populist wolves in the elite's henhouse. More important is to suggest the clock is ticking for a populist takeover in national elections. Now, being a parliamentary system, Britain doesn't have fixed elections, just outer limits, currently late 2029, 3 years away. Elections can happen early if the government becomes so unpopular MPs defect, but prediction market Kalshi is currently pegging those odds at just 12%, meaning Britain is probably stuck with the Labour government it hates for another 2.5 years.
I tend to think it's less likely than that, you know. He says he's going to disband or dispar all of Parliament. Otherwise, he stays in power. He'll do that if they call for him to go out. He'll get rid of all of them, and they have to go up for election. He knows that all of them won't be elected in. Almost all of them would be voted out.
There's probably replacing Starmer with more of the same. So how did Britain get into this mess? Over the past 30 years since John Major, both British parties congealed into a single center-left uniparty, basically Hillary Clinton versus Obama, both selling the same menu of migrants, wokeness, and stagnation. Now, once the populists did get traction, it split the vote, handing a freak victory to Labour, who won despite getting just 34% of the vote. So what's next, brought to you by The Bitcoin Way. What's happening in Britain is happening across Europe. A sclerotic uniparty tag teaming a Soviet administrative state with Soviet censorship while importing tens of millions of third worlders to replace the native population. In most of Europe, so Germany, France, Benelux, and Austria, mainstream parties are literally uniting in so-called cordon sanitaire to block out populists while criminalizing speech to keep low information voters away from the wrong thing. This creates a massive barrier to populists who literally have to outvote both major parties in a Soviet censorship regime, which is why the frog has not jumped yet, but it also paralyzes Europe since these grand coalitions of right and left can't get any reform, even if the public is enraged when war veterans are living the street while migrants.
Do you think letting all the illegals in, putting them in housing and paying for all their stuff while putting veterans out on the street and regular people, and also jacking up your taxes up the yin-yang to pay for all the illegals to come into your country, isn't a smart move?
Take 6 figures in welfare. This builds the anger to the point that when it bursts, Europe will make Trump look moderate. Winston Churchill said, if you're going through hell, keep going. Britain's got a ways to go, but the days are numbered for Britain's and Europe's imploding socialists. Follow 4 daily videos. Okay, we'll be...
They're replacing him. They're trying to get rid of all the Christian nationalists. All right, here's the one I've been promising. This lady, about a third of the way in, it gets really good. She does a number on Starmer and the whole Liberal Party. This is really good. So listen in. It's good.
This King's speech is taking place.
About a third of the way in, it gets pretty good. It's really, really good.
Extraordinary backdrop.
I listened to it twice.
We knew the carriages were booked. The the horses were ready, the king was coming, but would we have a prime minister? So, Mr. Speaker, it is such an honor to be the leader of the opposition who gets to respond today. May I start by congratulating the proposer and seconder of the loyal address on their excellent speeches. And can I also congratulate the whips for finding 2 backbenchers prepared to support the Prime Minister at this time? The honourable member for Bradford West gave a moving and
a whole 2 people
funny speech. I especially appreciated her comments about black and brown faces on TV, or as my children say, oh look, it's mummy again. She only touched lightly on the fact that she is someone who has faced one of the most challenging childhoods imaginable, and yet through the strength of her character has made it to this place. She's made of tough stuff, and that is something we need more of in this house. Anyone who can boast of chewing up and spitting out George Galloway in an election is clearly formidable. I also congratulate the member for Harlow on successfully delivering a humorous and warm-hearted speech. As he noted, he is my constituency neighbour, and he also, yes, did run the London Marathon last month, raising money for St Clair Hospice, which cares for both our constituents. And so I would like to take this opportunity to thank him for doing that.
All right, here comes the good part.
I've become a big fan of his after listening to his speech, especially after he was so generous in his comments about the Harlow Conservatives' successful election campaign and my councillor's outstanding work regenerating the town centre. And I would say to him, if things on that side of the house are getting a bit much, he would be very welcome to cross the floor and help Conservatives carry on that work. Mr. Speaker, I think we can say that the proposer and seconder of the loyal address have upheld the best traditions of the House. I would, of course, like to pay tribute to His Majesty the King. His Majesty has served through a period of great personal difficulty, and throughout he has exemplified the virtues of grace, dignity, humour, modesty, and resolve in the face of adversity. Virtues which were on full display during his hugely successful state visits to the United States. And I'm sure the whole House will have admired his skillful speech to Congress. It was a speech full of the wisdom and courage needed for our times. Of course, we would never have got to hear it if we'd listened to some people in this House who called for the King's visit to be cancelled. But thank goodness no one listens to the leader of the Liberal Democrats. As for the Prime Minister, when he was young, he called for the end of the monarchy. So I'm glad that the right honourable and learned gentleman has seen the error of his ways, because previous King Charleses took a much dimmer view of that kind of thing. I'm only sorry that this newfound appreciation of the monarchy and our country's traditions have come too late, because this is the first parliamentary session ever without the hereditary peers. And their departure will be keenly felt, and our parliament will be poorer for it. Especially, Mr. Speaker, when you consider some of the people that Labour have been replacing them with. People who've already had the whip removed before they've even taken their seats. Mr. Speaker, I know the convention is for this to be a light-hearted debate. But as I've already said, this is a highly unusual moment. The Prime Minister is in office, but not in power. Everyone is trying to pretend it's all right. It's not all right. In the past 48 hours, nearly 100 Labour MPs have called for the Prime Minister to resign. 4 ministers have quit. It is clear
it's now well over 100.
Authority has gone.
But he's going to disband Parliament if they force him out.
And that he will not be able to deliver what little there is in this King's speech. This is a government less than 2 years in office, which has already run out of ideas and run out of road. So how did we get here? There is a great line in the musical Hamilton, Mr. Speaker. Winning is easy, governing is harder. everything that has gone wrong in Labour's first...
Tim, I'll try to explain it again. What he has done to stay in power is he's threatened to disband all the parliament and have new elections. And everyone in that Liberal Party knows damn well they'd have a really hard time getting reelected. Pretty much every one of them would be gone. So he's threatening him with that to keep himself in power. So they're saying that he might resign tomorrow. We'll see. The King gave a speech today and this and that, and he had written it beforehand, but I guess there's been communications between him. He went and hid on Downing Street and locked himself in his parlor forever. No, wasn't talking to anyone for a while.
Last 2 years comes back to one problem. They came into office with no plan. They did not understand the difference between...
Actually, if he stays in office, it'll probably hurt the Liberal Party even more for a while. If he stays in for a while longer. The longer he stays, probably the worse it'll get.
Winning an election and governing a country. It was very easy to make promises in opposition, promises to freeze council tax, promises to take £300 off energy bills, promises to the WASPy women. Hundreds of Labour MPs took photos with them to post.
It kind of sounds like Mondami.
On their Facebook pages and their websites and their election leaflets, but at no point did they bother to think, how would they deliver any of it? They didn't spend their time in opposition thinking deeply about the country's problems.
I did hear that about the digital ID. They're kind of all for it, though. All but Farage isn't for it. Nigel Farage is the only one that's not for it, or people that follow him.
Assumed that governing in the 2020s would be like governing in the 1990s.
No, they haven't ousted him.
But it isn't. Britain is facing...
He's playing dirty pool, Tammy, dirty pool.
New structural problems. We have an aging...
If he goes, Colin, he's taking down the whole party with him. Is what he's threatening to do. Everyone right there in front of, sitting in front of him, they would all go. I don't think they'd win one race.
Speaker, they'll shout at me. I know they can't wait to get back to their plotting, but it's quite important that we hear what is going to be said. Because we have an aging population, a falling birth rate, and a welfare bill that is spiraling out of control.
Colin, but he's talking about disbanding all of Parliament and calling for elections early. So now they put it on hold of kicking him out. They're trying to find a way to get him out without that happening.
We have an information revolution in the shape of AI that
he's dirty. He's playing dirty.
The world of work as we know it, and the cost of energy is driving industry out of the country.
It'd be nice if he
Labour were
disbanded
taken by surprise that we are living in a more competitive and increasingly hostile world. Their manifesto was just a set of misleading promises. They promised no new taxes on working people. Fail. They promised to crack down on illegal immigration. Fail. They promised to tread more lightly on people's lives.
In fact, believe it, yesterday and today, they were shipping even more illegals in than normal. More illegals they're bringing in faster because they're trying to replace the voting population.
Epic fail. They made promises without knowing how anything works. Let's look at housing. Just after Labour took office, when I was Shadow Housing Secretary, I stood at this dispatch box and warned the former Deputy Prime Minister that she had been stitched up, that the 1.5 million new homes Labour promised had been hung like a millstone around her neck. I knew that they wouldn't be able to meet that target because they didn't understand.
Colin, it's now 107.
Why more houses weren't being built. Sure enough, they are already more than a third down on their target and well behind what we delivered. Exactly. Of course, Mr. Speaker, in the end, it wasn't 1.5 million homes that did for the former Deputy Prime Minister. It took just one flat in Brighton to bring her down.
You only need 81.
Mr. Speaker, it is so obvious. That is so obvious. I know they don't want to hear it, Mr. Speaker. But this, I know they don't want to hear it. Look at them. They are so arrogant. They want to lead our country. They can't even lead a coup. It is so obvious, Mr. Speaker.
They're so arrogant they can't even lead a coup.
That they cannot handle being in government. They cannot handle it. They hate the responsibility. They hate having to take tough decisions. They prefer scratching the itches that they had in opposition. Giving inflation-busting pay rises to the unions. 28% for the doctors who are still striking. Nearly 2 years, they are still striking. Handing out...
So they're giving them more money and they're still on strike for over 2 years.
More benefits to the only people who will still vote.
Oh, don't worry. In their system, they still get paid
for them, because Labour don't understand that poverty isn't created by a lack of benefits. It's created by a failing economy.
Yeah, about an hour before I came live, Colin, I was watching another live stream. A bit of it. I was collecting info on this, and it's up to 107 now.
We spent, Mr. Speaker, the last session.
They only need 81 anyways.
Listening to Labour MPs telling us how great everything was
going. Miriam.
No doubt we will hear lots of grandstanding speeches this week telling us what a fantastic job they did. How absurd, given the number of them demanding that the Prime Minister stands down. We counted, Mr. Speaker, there were 24 U-turns in that first parliamentary session. Winter fuel, family farms, grooming gangs, welfare reforms, social media for under 16s, day one workers' rights, the list...
Yeah, it seems like they're kind of making it illegal to have grooming gangs. Like they're not going to really do anything about it.
Goes on. And every single one of these U-turns had at its core a single issue: the Prime Minister's total lack of judgment. This is a man who, faced with a crisis of vision, charisma, and electoral success, sent for Gordon Brown. Leadership, Mr. Speaker, is about having a vision for this country. It's about having the courage to take difficult decisions, persuading your party that those difficult decisions will pay off in time, and taking responsibility for your mistakes. He has failed on every count. We've had pillars, promises, 4-point plans, 5-point plans, missions, none of it achieving anything. Reset after reset after reset. Even if the Prime Minister does last long enough in office to deliver this gracious speech, the bills announced today do not remotely come close to what the country needs. I know that they're chuntering, Mr. Speaker. Not a single one of them actually dares to intervene on me in this speech. I do, Mr. Speaker, however, want to welcome the government's ongoing support to Ukraine and its commitment to NATO. In this increasingly dangerous world, it is more important than ever that we stand with our allies in the fight against tyranny. I also commend the government for its commitment to speed up the delivery of infrastructure, such as new nuclear. Too many governments have been frustrated in their attempts to deliver nuclear projects quickly, and we will support efforts to make this process simpler, faster, and cheaper. I also want to be generous to the Home Secretary, because I can see that she is trying to do something about illegal immigration. But the elephant in the room is that she almost certainly won't be Home Secretary for much longer. Sadly, no one else in the Labour Party looks remotely interested in bringing down illegal immigration. The rest of this offering in the King's Speech, Mr. Speaker, makes it clear that they have learned no lessons from their mistakes in government so far. All we have is a load of re-announced policies, hounding our brave veterans through the courts, legislating for digital ID, a policy they told us they dropped, banning trail hunting, just more class war that makes no one's life better.
See, she brought up the digital ID too. A lot of people are against that, and they're still cramming it through no matter what. They want that for control.
Scrapping NHS England, something the Prime Minister announced 14 months ago. But then I suppose the Health Secretary has been a bit distracted lately, hasn't he? Yeah, hasn't he? Yeah. He's chuntering now. Why don't you just do your job? Do your job. Even worse, Mr. Speaker, is what isn't in the gracious speech. There's no point in him giving me dirty looks. We all know what he's been up to. We all know. Even worse, Mr. Speaker.
They must have some kind of big sex problem over there, I tell you. It seems like 90% of them have a sex problem.
Is what isn't in the gracious speech. There is no defense readiness bill because apparently it isn't ready. Where are the plans for welfare reform? There are none because Labour MPs blocked them.
How about getting all the illegals off the welfare?
Where is the plan to make savings? There isn't one because Labour don't know how to make savings. They only know how to spend money, other people's money. Where is the plan to support businesses? There isn't one because they don't understand that it is business that creates growth, not government. They have no answers to what really matters, the problems that must be solved to get Britain working again. Now, Mr. Speaker, I will say that I do feel very sorry for Labour backbenchers. I do. They arrived here, not that, it's true, I do feel sorry for Labour backbenchers, I do. They arrived here not that long ago with such high hopes. Some of them, in fact, were so talented, they were made ministers before ever speaking a word in Parliament. So talented.
Can you believe so many people have been canned and moved up because some people don't want it? That they haven't even been there a day, and they're already made ministers.
Although one of them has just resigned. I mustn't forget that. One of them has just resigned.
One of the new people didn't even speak a word, ended up resigning too.
Have watched, Mr. Speaker, their growing horror, day after day, week after week, as this hope descended into total chaos. The dread as they are sent out.
Oh, Colin, you have to close your borders and stop giving away free welfare and free homes and all that crap. That's what's tearing down your country. It's totally it. The same thing was Biden was doing here.
Yet again to defend the indefensible, the injustice at feeling like pariahs in their own constituencies.
Oh, but they changed the law so they can kind of get away with grooming gangs. It's only a little slap on the wrist now.
Banned from pubs, banned from hairdressers, which is presumably why all the women on the front bench have the same hairstyle. The realization, Mr. Speaker, that their legacy is just going to be... Now, they can complain as much as they like. I wasn't expecting this to be comfortable for them. They're the ones who are trying to unseat their prime minister. They should face that. The realization, Mr. Speaker, that their legacy is just going to be breakfast clubs and Peter Mandelson. Labour MPs have been treated as disposable by their leadership, sacked for backing the two-child benefit cap, sacked for opposing welfare changes, sacked for supporting farmers. The Prime Minister then U-turned on all of them. It must be tough when you take a principled stand and have the whip removed only for the government to confirm 6 months later that they agreed with you all along. It is no wonder, Mr. Speaker, that nearly 100 Labour MPs have now called for the Prime Minister to go. I know that there's another 100 who claim to be supporting him. Although
she's saying 100, and since then it's 107. I heard about 2 hours ago.
Some of them didn't even know that their names were on that list. When you can only get a quarter of your MPs to publicly back you, the game is up. And so the starting gun for the Labour leadership contest has been fired. So let's have a look at the runners and riders. We have the former Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, former Deputy Prime Minister, who has given up vaping. She's not here. She's given up vaping, but still hasn't paid her taxes. We have the Health Secretary, who accidentally sent his takeover plans to number 10, almost as incompetent as leaving them on the photocopier. And we have, Mr. Speaker, the Mayor of Manchester. The Mayor of Manchester, Mr. Speaker, a self-proclaimed winner who has twice failed to win the Labour leadership, including against the member for Islington North. As one Labour MP said about all the candidates in this race, and I quote, "We have to face up to the fact every single one of them is," I apologise, Mr. Speaker, F*** useless. I do feel sorry for the poor Labour MPs who
and that was Labour saying that.
will now be subjected to months of peacocking.
For those who don't know, Labor is the socialist Dems, you know, commies.
By leadership candidates while the country is not being governed. I have some advice for whichever of them eventually takes over. Getting to number 10 is not an award for being in a game show. This is not Strictly Come Dancing, and despite appearances, it's not Traitors either. If you are a housing secretary who can't work out her housing taxes, if you're a health secretary who can only cut waiting lists by deleting names from the waiting list, if you are Gordon Brown...
Can you believe that? They said, oh, our numbers are going down. They deleted names from the waiting list.
Former chief secretary to the Treasury, and you think the bond market...
When the list was actually going up, because they're putting illegals into the houses for free.
...markets are a hoax, I can assure you that being Prime Minister is going to be a lot tougher. Too many have failed because they thought winning an election or a leadership contest was the success. It is not. The work doesn't end when you get the job. That's when it starts. It is absolutely preposterous that the government is here laying out a program as its ministers are resigning and a large proportion of the party is saying that the Prime Minister needs to go. The whole thing is totally illogical. Either Labour MPs agree with this agenda, in which case, why are they trying to get rid of the Prime Minister? Or they don't agree with this agenda, in which case, what on earth are we all doing here?
He's laughing about it.
To be brutally honest, Mr. Speaker, it is time
to see that he's laughing about it.
To be brutally honest, the country is angry with the entire political class. All of us here, they are not happy with how we.
It's because they're getting screwed up the butt by him.
We have been doing politics. It is time to get serious. I will give way.
Their problem is they're paying for all the legals and shipping more and more in. Constantly, and they're screwing the people.
I will give way.
The Right Honourable Lady seeks to lecture us on why it is that everyone is so fed up with the political class, but uses this opportunity not to lay out what the Conservatives would do, but to spend her time insulting everybody on this side.
She has a good answer for this.
That's not the way to proceed.
Oh, I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet. There is plenty more coming. There is plenty more coming. And the honourable...
Boy, that lady looked like a Karen, didn't she?
The lady says she's getting a lecture. She is getting a lecture. She is getting a lecture. We're all getting a lecture.
He doesn't.
We are legislators of the United...
You know what he cares about, Colin? He cares about staying in power. He wants to stay in power because they have money and all the sex they get and all that kind of stuff.
We were sent here to fix difficult things, not focus on our personal hobby horses, ranging from the petty to the puerile. I would say to members opposite, you don't need to be scared of the member for Clacton. I'm not. He is not the cause of Britain's problems. He is a symptom. No, he is. They are still, Mr. Speaker, they are still delusional. They are still delusional, Mr. Speaker. I'm sorry to puncture the bubble. I am not here to pretend that what is happening is not happening. They can all pretend and live in la-la land. I'm going to speak the truth to them. He is not the cause of Britain's problems. He is a symptom of the failure of the political class to focus on what matters. If you fix the problems that people care about, he goes away. But I will give way. I will give way.
I'm very glad that she's giving way, and she's saying that the honourable member for Clacton is a symptom of the problems. But would she agree that what she and he both have in common is that she very loosely agreed that we should race into war with America in Iran, and then just a week later, she thought maybe that's not such a good idea. And doesn't that prove why she and he are
basically, you missed a lot, Tammy. They're kind of roasting Starmer, and the Liberals are trying to defend them here. It's funny as hell.
Totally unsuitable on this side of the house.
This black lady, the conservative lady, is roasting him pretty good.
That was a nice try. It's not going to work. So you cannot solve these problems, Mr. Speaker. You cannot solve the problems of the country unless you have a plan, to fix the civil service, the regulators, the legislative straitjackets, powers transferred from Parliament to the courts. Unless you fix structures of government, everyone will continue to fail. Britain is not ungovernable, and it is not broken. The reason we published an alternative King's Speech, I'll say to the Honourable Lady who was asking what the plan was, we have published an alternative King's Speech, is because we need to take tough decisions.
I cannot believe that Starmer is not stepping down, and he's blackmailing him to stay in power. Unbelievable.
To get the country out of the mess we're in. Cutting wasteful spending, funding defence, securing our borders, reducing the cost of energy. If you want to bring down bills for families and bring industry back to this country, you need a plan to scrap the net zero legislation, strangling industry and making energy costs higher. That's why we're proposing a cheap energy bill to do just that. If you want this...
Yeah, because he says he's going to disband all the parliament and have new elections, and those Labour people, no, they won't get reelected. So they gotta somehow stand up and try to defend him here. They're trying to defend him, and it's as ridiculous as possible. And she's tearing him a new butthole.
Businesses to employ people, you need to stop crushing them with thousands of pages of employment laws and stop handing power to the unions. You need to stop hammering businesses with tax rises. That's why we're proposing a Get Britain Working bill that would scrap laws that are no longer fit for purpose and are killing jobs. If you want to get a grip on illegal immigration...
Colin, he should have stepped down a long time ago when they had the old knees up thing that was going on, the sex thing.
And remove foreign criminals from the country,
a lot of people believe he's a pedo.
You must have a plan to leave the ECHR and repeal the Human Rights Act. You must. Efforts to get control of our borders have been frustrated because power has been taken out of the hands of ministers.
Yeah, it peeved me off today that I seen that they were rushing to ship more illegals in as fast as they could. They sent extra boats out to get more of them in from France. There were one boat after another were coming in with more illegals today. It was so annoying. But he's got to get them in there quickly.
We need to bring that power back.
I'm sorry, I'm annoyed for that part.
Murderers staying in our country because the courts stop us from deporting them. Yeah. Our alternative King's Speech shows how it can be done, letting the government, not the courts,
Oh yeah, and he shut down the courts yesterday that were going through the cases to try to deport them. That was the other thing he did. He's desperate to get more illegals in there to vote for him.
Decide who comes and goes. Prime ministers are going to keep running into problems until they deal with activist lawyers.
He's one of the open borders globalists. That's what he is. He believes in all one world government.
And international agreements that tie the government's hands against the interests of the British public. Oh, Mr. Speaker, they're chanting that it... Mr. Speaker, they're chanting that it's... Does someone want to stand up and tell us who they're supporting? Is it the plotters or the PM? Is it? Because I know that's what they really want to get to. They're not interested in hearing what a plan for the country should be because they're too focused on Labour Party problems. Mr. Speaker, we will keep running into these problems until they deal with activist lawyers and international agreements that tie the government's hands against the interests of the British public. Next, we must reduce welfare spending. It is
start using something like an ICE and shipping them out of there.
Eating every penny that we generate in income tax and more. We must spend much more on defence. Even former Labour defence secretaries are pleading with the government to do this. That's why we're proposing a sovereign defence fund, which will overhaul Britain's defence industrial base. That's what the alternative could be. That alternative King's Speech makes difficult choices because that is what leadership is. We have laid out these plans now because we are more than happy for Labour to take them. They might be our political opponents, Mr. Speaker, but we are all citizens of this country. We recognise the enormous challenges facing Britain. We want to see these problems solved, and so do our constituents. Time and again, I have offered the Prime Minister support to pass difficult legislation.
See these ones in the front here, all these Sikhs and stuff like that? That's messing up their country too. The ones here with the head things, or Sikhs, they're pretty radical too.
Time and again, I have offered the Prime Minister support to pass difficult legislation. Time and again,
he's
he has
still
turned it
smiling.
down.
See the smirk on his face? He knows he's staying in power because he's got the lever of disbanding the whole parliament, and the Labour Party knows damn well they won't get reelected. There'll probably hardly be any of them left.
It might be too late for him now, but it's not too late for his successor. Yeah. It is time to get
Someone's going to have to go there and twist his arm to get him out of there.
serious. It is time to deliver. That is what the British public expect. That is what the Conservative Party will do.
The problem is most of her party isn't really conservative. They're kind of conservative light, sort of like rhinos, you know? Kind of something like that. All right, I'm going to move on to some humor. This is labeled TDS. I thought that one was good. They're kind of poking fun at both sides here. Let's see. Love. I don't know the rights to those music there. They always use that. Here is about Agenda 2030, the global plan.
So everything that we saw in Ukraine was planned. Everything that we saw the Agenda 2030 was Agenda 20. It was all planned. It was all paid for. Barack Obama signed this country in 2015 with Samantha Power and Susan Rice onto Agenda 2030, which is a nation-state ending plan for global governance, technocracy, and totalitarian control on a global scale. And trillions of dollars after Obama signed that went into that being the end game. And all of a sudden Trump wins. So people have to understand the destruction, the coup against the sitting president of the United States, Donald Trump, was a global operation because they had global plans that they were not willing.
It's himself. He has the power to disband Parliament and call for new elections. That's who's protecting him. It's himself. He's so desperately clawing to power.
To allow Donald Trump to even look at. And so they kept him tied up in fake, phony investigations that they concocted, a 2-year special counsel with Andrew Weissman. Yeah. And they knew that everything they were investigating was a lie.
Because they created the lie. They knew it was a lie because they created it all. I mean, that's the incredible part. So, you know, they count on the fact that the American people didn't know because the American people weren't part of that lie. And when you talk about that agenda, 2030, I mean, people have heard of it, but I would urge people to actually look it up and read Agenda 2030 because your description of it is actually the most significant description. It is a nation-ending plan. It is the end of sovereignty. It is the end of nations. It's the culmination of decades of the open borders activism of George Soros and his Open Society foundations, which is in more than 125 countries around the world. And that's why you
Yeah,
have
I'm
all
sick,
these
yeah.
organizations now, the Animal Rights Federation and, and so on and so on, who now have to have offices all over the world, right? It's why BLM, the moment they get any money and they get some fame, what do? They get a BLM Policy Foundation, then they get a BLM Global Foundation, and then you've got, and the same thing happens in this whole network, the Tides Foundation. They have their, then the Tides Foundation announces, oh, we're going to be managing the BLM Global Foundation. What does that mean? You're going to be laundering money and sharing resources with all of these people whose, by the way, whose tax-free status is violated on a minute-by-minute basis. But that's okay, because we've got the IRS sewn up, and we're going to make sure that the IRS never touches you. God help you if you're not on our team, because they're coming for you. Anyone who's not on our team, we're coming for you. And once we got Donald Trump out the way, there's nothing between them and everybody else, right? And that was their thing.
So then go ahead with their global plans after that.
Is that when Trump won, it so upset that plan. And what people forget is that the president of the United States of America is not just the commander in chief. He is the diplomat in chief. And what you touched on was the fact that they were so angry. They have these foreign policy plans. They decide foreign policy, and all these bills that they pass. They're like, oh, there's an election coming up in Hungary 5 years from now, but we don't like the rise of these right-wing parties in Hungary. So we're going to allocate 5 years of resources of the United States government to making sure those groups don't rise to power. So it doesn't matter who comes into power in that time. We've already got a foreign policy that extends years beyond that election. And you're going to, and that's why they got so upset when they, what they kept saying about Trump. Remember, well, that's not how it's done. That's not how it's done. And so that's why this time around, one of the executive orders that Trump signed just after he came into office was for the foreign policy manual to be rewritten. And people hear that and they're like, oh, that's so boring. I want to slip into a coma. But they don't understand that the reason it matters is that when Trump puts people into those agencies like the State Department, which sadly is just another arm of the intelligence agencies, but when he puts them in there, they can't get anything done because everybody says that's not how it's done. Oh, get the manual. Get the manual. Yeah, it's not there. Oh, no, we're not doing that. That's not allowed. No. It's not in the manual. That's not how it's always been done. So second time around, Trump realized we have to do something about this. People working for him realized, and you know what, Mel? No rewrite. 90 days they were supposed to rewrite the foreign policy manual, and it hasn't happened.
Yeah.
And no one asked Marco Rubio about that.
Yeah, we have to. But the bigger thing about that I was happy about was because the USAID is not aid. It is international capture that they call international development. Mm-hmm. A lot of this stuff goes back to what that time period that I talk about. Even what you're saying about global governance. Like there was a time when I call it the Rockefeller model because, way back with the Reith Commission in the 50s, they were looking into the Rockefeller foundations, the Ford Foundation, Carnegie Institute,
they're all
as subverting the will of the people. Yeah.
All of them. Everyone you just listed, they're still the same players.
Yes. And then after they signed Agenda 2030, then you noticed everyone had a global foundation. Mm-hmm. The Bill Melinda Gates, the Clintons, the Obamas, the McCains, everyone, the Romneys, they're all opening global foundations. Well, why? Because they were preparing for global governance. Against the will of the people. And you brought up something great that I always used to say. I would say to Donald Trump, he'd say, they're not after me, they're after you, and I'm in the way. And I'd say, they're not after America, they're after the world, and America is in the way.
That's
our
true.
Constitution, our Bill of Rights, our DNA, our history, our unity was in the way. So they had to destroy that from the top down because these people that voted for Donald Trump are not going to have what they want. We have already decided the future of America, and we are going to make that happen and destroy Trump as soon as possible. And honestly, they believe that by now he would have been in jail and we would have had a very different country because Kamala Harris and Joe Biden put out a document going into when they were still the candidates for the second term, a global compact and a global cooperation document that literally said in the first sentence that not only was the second Biden term going to lead the world to Agenda 2030, but that they were also going to finance it with $3 trillion to help everyone get in line and be ready so that everyone would achieve it. And that there was a whole document online, and I thought, oh my God, they're not even hiding it.
Yep. All right, here's Glenn Beck. He's talking about the teachers union and Democratic Party.
Oh, in Virginia, and you'll never guess the county in Virginia where this is happening. It has been revealed now that the Virginia student accused of photographing and videotaping more than 40 students under a bathroom stall at Freedom High School.
Of course, a dude photographing a female
identifies
or
as
girls.
transgender.
It's a dude.
Principal Tina Brown sent an email to parents last month announcing that a student had allegedly been caught recording another student under a bathroom stall. Now, you as a parent, what would you do? You get that letter. What do you do? I don't think, as a dad, I don't think I read a strongly.
That's how I got the video to work.
I don't think I go,
It
well,
does
you know
that
what,
once in a
let's
while.
see how
I think
this
I need a
plays
new
out.
camera. I don't know.
If I have a daughter or a son in that school, I'm at the school, immediately at the school. Get this. Announcing that a student had allegedly been caught recording another student under a bathroom stall. Brown issued a follow-up email last week stating that it was not an isolated incident and urged more students that may have been victims to come forward. Looks like there might be as many 40 people that have been photographed by this dirtbag kid.
This seems to be a problem in Loudoun County.
You think? You think it? Really?
You recall the father that was arrested during the school board meeting because of what happened to his daughter by a, quote, gender fluid individual? This is 2021. We're in 2026. What's wrong with Loudoun County?
Let me ask you this. What's wrong with the Democratic Party? Let me take you to Seattle. A Seattle public school teacher under investigation over allegations she physically abused a student is likely to become the next president of the Seattle Education Association.
So they make her the president?
Union for educators and staffers. She's under investigation that she physically abused a student.
Sexually, I believe. They're all for this open sex stuff with grooming.
Now listen, this is what happened to her. The parents of a third grade student at Rising Star who has autism, a speech delay, is partially verbal. The parents said they noticed bruises in the shape of adult fingers on their son's arm in October and again in December. Using visual aids, they asked their son whether an adult caused the bruises, and he identified this teacher. Parents also alleged that in December, their son's therapist saw her throw a marker at the child's head, which allegedly struck his face while he was working at the whiteboard. And she's going to be in charge of the teachers union. So let me ask you, not what's wrong with the people in Virginia, not what's wrong with the teachers in Virginia or the voters in Virginia, not even about the transgender students that are going underneath a bathroom stall. What's wrong with the teachers and the Democratic Party? What's wrong with the labor unions and the Democratic?
They want to have sex with kids day of birth on the left there, Colin. Day of birth. The day they're born, they want to be able to have sex with them. They're totally fine with that.
Democratic Party, because they seem to love to abuse kids one way or another. It seems always to be a teacher, a union, a Democrat. I mean,
and she's going to be a teachers union leader.
What's the deal? It's not always that way, obviously, but it seems to be a problem. What is happening with our teachers unions? I got to tell you, I say this all the time, and I love teachers and blah, 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 blah. There's lots of great teachers, but I don't know how you pay. I can't put you into you're a trustworthy citizen if you're in the teachers union. I can't do it. I can't do it. How much more evidence do you need? I mean, you could just stop, full stop. Hey, by the way, whose fault was it that our kids were so scarred because of the masks and no school? Oh, that's right. It was the teachers union. Full stop. You could stop there. But then everything that you see the teachers unions doing is always against the students. It's incredible to me. This is just a hive of evil, it seems to me. And I don't know if you're a teacher, if you're a good teacher, how you don't see things like this and go, I can't be a part of that union. I just can't be a part of it. I'd like to be, but I can't. They're so far away from anything that seems to be common sense and decent when it comes to kids. I can't be a part of it. So I'm sorry, teachers, but there comes a time when you have to distance yourself. There comes a time when you have to go, you know what, I got to get up and leave. I can't do it.
Amen on that. Oh, all right. Here's a little bit more on it about schools here. Insane. Well, here you go.
So 2025, President Trump just gets elected. Basically, nothing gets started yet. They come out with an agenda. Page 18, if anybody is able to look this up, is about opposing ICE. This is like right away. He just got...
They're teaching this in the little kids' schools.
Elected. They already started planning how to oppose ICE. Then it is actually connected to what I'm holding here. This is from Scholastic, and this is information about American immigration laws. And if anybody, again, wants to look it up, we'll link it. But it basically teaches you how to essentially defy ICE and reuse these terms of immigration and basically say that these are undocumented immigrants. And I want to take this to the next level and show how further down the line they go from an agenda like this one, where they use the term Donald Trump with fascism. They actually say that they are going to inculcate Donald Trump and the term fascism as synonyms. So people can look it up. We'll link to this. And down the line, you create these toolkits, which I'd like us to explain what these toolkits are. The NEA will work with book publishers to make sure that the teachers have the path of least resistance to actually teach what it is. And this book is called Land of the...
So they're teaching that in our schools.
Cranes. The book basically describes that there are many people who come here from other countries with the attempt to destroy America, not to live the American dream, not e pluribus unum, not Ellis Island, not the reason that my parents and many of the parents who are watching came here to the United States to be an American, but actually to change America and conquer America. So much so that in some case scenarios, some people who've come from Mexico have used the term Reconquista. Okay, people can look it up in Peter Schweitzer's book. Now, I read this book and I said, wow, this is really shocking. I'm not sure that I can believe it. It's probably a fringe group. And even if there is a Reconquista movement coming in from Mexico into the United States, it's very likely that, at least on our side, we are rejecting it. We are defending our own country. What are the chances that in America's education system, we are actually inculcating, brainwashing kids with the concept of Reconquista? There's just no way. There's no way, Ryan, that our...
That means conquer America.
Schools would be teaching this, right? This is why I'm holding this book, and I'd like you to explain this to me. So this book is a Scholastic Gold book. People can find it on Amazon if they don't want to give them the money. They can just read the description. In essence, the book is about a child who identifies as the child of Aztec roots. Let me remind everybody how peaceful, loving the Aztecs were. Okay. So she comes to the United States of America with her family and obviously goes through the struggles. She lives in Los Angeles and she realized that this land does not belong to the United States of America. Her grandpa teaches her that this land actually was taken, stolen from her family and their heritage, and therefore they have to come here and essentially Reconquista. Why should they really learn English? Why should they actually assimilate? No, they should not. They, in fact, should grab the land and make sure that they realize their true potential by taking the land back. One more point here, and I'm going to let you comment on this. Page 35 in this book. I remind Mommy, this is the land of the Cranes. Okay, so the Cranes is used synonymously with the children of the Aztecs who've come from Mexico. Okay, I remind Mommy, this is the land of the Cranes. We have wings that can soar above walls.
Yep, they want to invade us. Totally. Okay, I got time for one more. This is about failed policies, Democratic policies.
Well, Javier Becerra responds to the 85,000 immigrant children that were missing under his watch. Let me show you the video.
Lauren wanted me to thank everyone yesterday when she was on with me yesterday. The one running for Congress there, Lauren.
Times investigation found the health department couldn't find some 85,000 children it had released.
That's not accurate. What you just read is not accurate. First, that's what I'll say, because it was never the case that we could not find kids. You're essentially, I don't know if you got those talking points from Donald Trump.
It's from a New York Times article.
That's not what the New York Times article said. The New York Times said that individuals, the children and their sponsors, did not respond to calls. They didn't say we couldn't find kids.
Working overnight in slaughterhouses, replacing roofs, operating machineries in factories, children as young as 14 years old.
That part occurred after these children had left the care of Department of Health and Human Services.
To let these children go into those individual spots.
So they come out of the services at 14?
In their responsibility.
Some of
I
these
thought they'd stay till
probably
18.
because they needed to earn some money.
It should tell you a lot when the response is immediate. These are Donald Trump talking points. No.
I bet you that guy's making money off from it.
These are reports that came out under his watch in Health and Human Services. Now, I don't know about you, but if my kid was taken into CPS custody and we had court dates and the state was trying to keep track, the county was trying to keep track of my kid, if the sponsors are not responding, if they're not answering the calls, if they're not going to court, what exactly would you call that? It's called slave labor. And to label it as maybe these kids just needed money after we released them to the sponsors that said they would take care of them. I can't believe that Becerra is actually the front runner of the DNC. And the reason they did that is because he's Mexican, because that's how little they think of you. They know that most people vote off identity politics, and look at where it's got us. We in California are barely hanging on by a thread. And this is all because of the Democrat supermajority. And now you have Latino influencers.
And that's what they're trying to get nationwide by bringing all these illegals in.
And all these influencers who want to pretend they're so concerned about immigration. Meanwhile, the candidate that they're supporting allowed for children to be unaccompanied minors at the border to be trafficked for slave labor. And they just needed to make some money. He should not only be disqualified, he should be investigated. It is time to vote differently. And I really do hope that there's some kind of investigation and some people held accountable for what happened to all of these children. Because it's not a Republican talking point. It is not a Trump talking point. This is the failures of Javier Becerra within HHS and the Biden administration that allowed this to happen.
Amen. Okay, I'm going to end it there. Should be back on tomorrow. Game plan is 5. We'll see what happens. All right? Take care. God bless everyone. Bye-bye.